radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke Radio. For the masses. Yeah, man. How you doing? How you doing? Today's Wednesday, June 10th, 2020. 162 days into the new year. 204 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planets. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? All right. Tonight, Bruce R. Fenton is here, live from the United Kingdom. We're going to be discussing the release of his new book, Exogenesis: Hybrid Humans, A Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation. Co-authored with his wife, Daniella. Tomorrow night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. Now, a little bit later on in the show, I'm going to talk about Fader night tomorrow night. And I'm going to give you some homework for the show tomorrow night. Yeah. And Jimmy Kashkin. Yeah, homework. Pop quiz. I'm not kidding. So we'll get into that in just a bit. And very excited about the show tonight. Bruce is a great researcher. His wife is great. And the last book is great. Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. So follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can start there. Make Orwell fiction again. Mofa. So that's, is that a Mofa hat? Mofa? A Mofa hat. I want a Mofa hat. Make Orwell fiction again. That's pretty funny. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's from Mark over in Australia. That's pretty good, Mark. That's pretty good. All right. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox on Twitter. It's going to be a great show tonight. Oh, man. You know what? After last night, Del Bigtree, right? After the night before, think about this, Nadine Lalich, right? Think about how huge those two shows were. And then tonight, Bruce Fenton, Hybrid Humans. Man. Twitter's going to be on fire tonight. Okay? And by the way, the cranky old man in me, is not going to let loose yet. But, man, I'm getting close. I'm getting so close. to just, I don't care. But I'm not going to do it tonight. I'm close, though. It could be any night. Any night is going to be the night. My brother-in-law and I, Big, he's the best. And we tease each other. We've been doing it for better part of 10 years. Tonight's the night, man. You and I. And it's just so funny. And I'm just saying, it could happen anytime. It could happen anytime. And I only bring that up because Rita's word of the day, morass. Oh, man. And I so want to get further into that word, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm waiting for the text. The text is going to come in. Jimmy, don't do it. Rita's going to go, don't do it. Don't. Not tonight. Not tonight. Tonight's not the night. Come on, church. Don't do it. But the word of the day is morass. And there you go. I'll leave it to the rest of you. It's a wonderful, wonderful word. So there you go. What a great day today. I'm in a great mood. I can't wait for Bruce Fenton at the bottom of the hour. Like I said, it's very simple. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. Hashtag F2BQ is fade to black questions. And so save hashtag F2BQ for just questions. Okay? Only post questions in there, nothing else, because it just gets clogged up. I can't waste time on scrolling and looking for things. I just want to see questions and hashtag F2BQ. Right? Hashtag F2BQ. Yeah, I said it right. Okay, you can also email throughout the show, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. Del Bigtree on the show last night talking about the coronavirus vaccine, and it was at times scary. There were times last night where I just had to step back and go, okay, that right there is scary. That's scaring me. The one point that we can walk away from with Dell out of the 100 that were presented on the show last night is the vaccine, whatever for a certain group, but what you need to do is get your immune system boosted. That's what you need. You need to make sure that all of your liquids are topped off. Topped off. That's it. That's what you've got to do. Go to getthetea.com. Go to getthetea.com. Get their immunity special. That's what you do. The package is right there, and you can start with that. Okay? Head over to getthetea.com. All orders over $50, free shipping with the promo code FADER, FADER. All right, now when you're over at jimmychurchradio.com, I want you to visit Billy Carson's new internet TV network, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. The banners are right there at jimmychurchradio.com. Okay, go, get registered. 3-day free preview. So go and check it out right now. River Moon Coffee, drinking it right now. It is truly the fuel that keeps this show going. Jimmy is waiting for this moment. What is that? That's hold on. I want to see this gift. What's the moment there? What is the moment? I need the moment. I agree with the gift, but what's the moment I'm waiting for? Oh, I'm waiting for people like Frankie Fourfingers to only post questions in hashtag F2BQ. That's the moment I'm waiting for. Then that GIF applies. Yeah. All right. Where am I at? Let's just get right back to it. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv, River Moon Coffee, rivermooncoffee.com, Amazon, the Amazon store. The banners are over at jimmychurchradio.com. Let's get straight to the breaking news. I got a ton of it. Astronomers are praising SpaceX's response to months of outcry over the visibility of the company's Starlink internet satellites from scientists dismayed by the interference with observatories. That's right. A SpaceX response includes a new strategy for reducing the amount of light Starlink satellites reflect down to Earth. They've sent a couple up, they painted them, they got some things that they're doing. Not good enough, but they're working on it. Starlink is only the first of the so-called mega constellation that the companies plan to develop. These programs aspire to encompass, are you ready? Thousands, even tens of thousands of satellites in orbit around the Earth. SpaceX is the first company to have a fleet of hundreds in orbit, and that vanguard alerted optical astronomers that they had a new problem to tackle, a huge increase in satellites reflecting streaks of light at scientific observatories. The problem has been particularly noticeable soon after each Starlink launch, before the satellites reach their final orbital altitude of 340 miles, since they can be seen by the naked eye. But operational satellites continue to interfere with sensitive observatories. They're working on it. Can you believe I haven't seen Starlink yet? I haven't seen Starlink. You know, we got a lot of light pollution here in LA, so that's part of it. Second, we've been in 6 months of lockdown, so we haven't really been out, and we're not, sky watches and all of that stuff. Haven't done it. Have been in the right area to check it out. I do want to see it, though. I do want to see it. Now, 2 headlines hit the news today. 2. Here's headline number 1. Listen. Headline number 1. Russian nuclear-capable bombers intercept U.S. aircraft near Alaska. Headline number 2. U.S. intercepts Russian bombers and fighter jets off coast of Alaska. Okay. One was from Fox News, the other from CNN. And they are opposites. There you go. Which one would you click on? Which one is accurate? Well, that's for you to decide. I'm just going to leave all of this on the table right here. Moving on. All right. A report just published by Aviation Week says that a hypersonic missile prototype under development by DARPA reportedly detached from a heavy bomber in mid-flight during a test, destroying the high-tech and secretive munition. Now, the test saw the missile, a hypersonic air-breathing weapon concept, otherwise known as a Hawk, a joint project of the Air Force and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, inadvertently separated from the B-52 that was carrying it and crashed to the ground below. Though DARPA declined to provide further details, stating that all information on the flight demonstration is classified. It is thought to have occurred near Edwards Air Force Base, right down the street here in California, where the military conducts all of those secret UFO programs. New military systems as well. It's right up the street. Right up the street. Well, today, the journal Nature Communications has just published a report that physicists set a new record by linking together 15 trillion atoms by using quantum entanglement. The researchers heated a small glass tube filled with vaporized rubidium and inert gas and nitrogen gas to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then shot a beam of polarized light at it. When the researchers measure the rotation of the light waves that come out of the other side of the glass tube, they can determine the total spin of the gas atoms. Now, that consequently transfers the entanglement onto the atoms and leaves them in an entangled state. The atoms were in what physicists call a macroscopic spin singlet state. Say that 5 times. A collection of pairs of entangled particles, total spins that sum 0. The initially entangled atoms pass their entanglement to each other via collisions in the game of, quantum tag, exchanging their spins but keeping the total spin at 0. and allowing the collective entanglement state to persist for at least a millisecond. For instance, particle A is entangled with particle B, but when particle B hits particle C, it links both particles with particle C, and so on. Got it? I know that E.T. gets it. That's all I need to know. I'll leave you with these two breaking stories. At least 12 cities and municipalities in the United States are starting to ban or have banned the use of chokeholds by the police. Those include Phoenix, Los Angeles, Sacramento, San Diego, Broward County, Florida, Miami, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Minneapolis, New York City, Denver, and Houston. And earlier today, NASCAR announced that it will no longer allow the Confederate flag to be displayed at all of their events and properties. There you go. The StarWorks UFOs and Artificial Intelligence Conference in Laughlin, Nevada. It's going on November 5th through the 8th at the Aquarius Hotel and Casino. Is bigger and better than ever. Grant Cameron's going to be there. Paul Hynek's going to be there. Sid Goldberg's going to be there. James Fox is going to be there. I'm going to be there. Rita's going to be there. The Fade to Black crew is going to be there. We're going to do 2 nights, November 5th and 6th. Thursday night, Friday night, Sky Watches. Yeah, and you know you want to be there. Just go to StarWorksUSA.com for tickets and info. Disclosure Fest, biggest event in the world. 20,000 attendees at the historic Los Angeles Park in downtown Los Angeles is going on my birthday, October 10th, 2020. I want you to visit disclosurefest.org for tickets and info on how to get registered and how to support, how to donate all of the initiatives for Disclosure Fest. I'll be hosting, I'll be speaking. We're going to be doing Fader X. It's going to be great. Let's get the show cracking. Happy birthday to today, Bill Burr, 52 years old. Elizabeth Hurley, 55. Drummer Jimmy Chamberlain is 56, Smashing Pumpkins. And comedian Rich Hall is 66 years old. Our dead guy's birthday today is Judy Garland, 1922 to 1969, died at the age of 47. Played Dorothy Gale in The Wizard of Oz. That's all you need to know. On this day in history, OTD, 1692. In Salem Village in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, Bridget Bishop, the first colonist to be tried in the Salem witch trials, is hung after being found guilty of the practice of witchcraft. On this day, OTD, 1692. Fader fact, the first person to get a PhD in computer science in the United States, I'm going to say it again, the first person to get a PhD in computer science was Sister Mary Kenneth Keller, BVM. And she earned a PhD from the Computer Sciences Department at the University of Wisconsin in 1965. Sister Mary was indeed a nun. Her first dissertation, Inductive Interference on Computer-Generated Patterns, focused on constructing algorithms, I'm quoting here from the paper, focused on constructing algorithms that performed analytic differentiation on algebraic expression, written in CDC Fortran 63. End quote. Clark College has established the Mary Kenneth Keller Computer Science Scholarship in her honor. That is your Fader fact. All right, tonight Bruce R. Fenton is here. It's Hybrid Humans all night long. I got to hit this River Moon coffee because now I'm going to discuss your homework. All right, River Moon coffee. How many times has something strange happened to you? Yeah. Something totally unexplainable. You know, when you're scratching your head, you're spending time thinking about it, and then you just move on. How many times does this happen? Because the next day arrives and whatever went on the day before is sort of, it's forgotten. In fact, something strange may happen the next day as well, forcing the previous day's trippiness further back in your brain. It's just the way that it is. And then the days turn into weeks and then into years. So many events like these can happen to all of us nearly every single day. We understand that. But we just dismiss them and move on to the next one. So I ask all of you right now to just stop and think about the past. Go back to a strange occurrence that happened many years ago. Pull up a few. You can do it. You can do it. You can. Bring back the memories, right? And think about them now, since you've probably acquired a little bit of knowledge, right, about strange phenomena. Sure. Since the start of the show, I've done a lot of recalling because I like to just sit back and think about the past. I go back and I review my memory files. And there are things there. I have shared many of those with you over the years, and it's only because I just sit and think. Right? It's what I do. Most of the little tales that I've talked about here on Fade to Black, I've never talked about before. Or just between the friends that were there at the time. But then life takes over and things kind of move on, whatever. And everything's just kind of left to the sands of time. I've shared with you, have you seen my dog? I've shared with you the Zeppelin story, the Hollywood backhouse ghost story, me getting lost in Pasadena back in 1985. I don't like talking about that one. And so many more. But these are personal experiences that would have never been told again after they had happened if it wasn't for this show. Today, the Elf tweeted out my appearance on the Karen Reese show from last year. And I decided to watch the clip because, to tell you the truth, I had never seen it. And I know I did it, but after it was done, I don't go back and check things out. It's kind of like listening to your voice in a recording. It sucks, and it's twice as bad when it's high def video. I just don't do it. I don't go and watch myself on TV, but I did today. And on Karen Reese's program, which I'd forgotten about, I told the story about the disappearing house in Indianapolis. And as I watched, I recounted everything that happened. I was replaying it. The day, my car, it's a Toyota station wagon, the location. And it all went down pretty much exactly as I described it for her audience. And it was a very strange event, but it was real. And this is the trippy thing. I'm not sure what her live audience thought about it, but anyone else watching and listening to me tell the tale probably would think I was nuts and maybe making it up. I know I would, seriously. Okay, that's just the way it is. To my memory, after that day ended, I never repeated anything to anyone for 35 years. Not until this show. Yeah. My friends that I brought back to show them the house. I went and picked up some friends, 2 or 3, and brought it back. And it wasn't there. Well, they thought I had lost my mind. They thought I was making it up. They knew, just like I knew, there were only 2 streets that were in play. And we drove up and down both of them. The house was simply not there. All I had was my story, nothing more. The whole thing, the house, the memory, everything just went away. It was forgotten. You, talking to you have these same memories. You do. You have the same types of memories. They're buried. So just take the time to think, to get them back. And I want you to get out a pen and paper and take some notes. Tomorrow night is another Fader night. So yes, this is the homework I'm giving you to do. I want you to get it done. I want to hear your stories, your experiences. I want to hear the strange stuff that you just couldn't explain. Both to yourself and to anyone else. You have plenty of time to get your thoughts in order. I want you to do it. It's easy to do. It's really easy to do. And these types of memories are things that you just kind of end up dismissing. Strange, yes, right. But because you're not out there talking to people about it, you don't share. It just goes. It goes on the back. The next thing you know, you're busy. You got school, work, jobs, family, husband, wife, kids, everything to deal with. You just don't go back and share them so they sit. Because I do it all the time. I just sit here and go, wow, that's right. That's right. I mean, have you seen my dog? What, you think I shared that story every day for the rest of my life to anybody that I met? No. My friends and I laughed about it and talked about it and told a few friends after it happened, but that's it. It's gone. It's gone until this show. Zeppelin story? Never told anybody about that. Never did. That stayed back. It just happened to surface one day, and I shared it immediately on this show. But the Pasadena story, I never told anybody about that. I want to tell people, hey, went across the street from my house, got lost for a day. Just don't do it. You don't do it. So tomorrow night, I want to hear your lost memory stories. That's it. It's going to be a great night on the show. As you peel it back, you're going to think of things that you hadn't thought of in a long time. I guarantee it. It's great. All right, let's get out of here. Live from Wales, Bruce R. Fenton. He is up next. We will be talking about his new book, Exogenesis, Human Hybrids, A Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation. And then, of course, tomorrow night, Fader Night. Open lines all night long. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Follow me on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. And then hashtag F2BQ is Fade to Black questions. Only questions. You guys are good. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to getthetea.com and purchase your super strength cleansing tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com for super strength tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Matthew. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. I ask you. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Tonight, Bruce R. Fenton joins us live from the United Kingdom discussing his new book, Exogenesis, Human Hybrids, A Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation, co-authored with his wife, Daniella. Tomorrow night is Fader Night, open lines all night long. Now, Bruce is a British scientific researcher. His expeditions have been featured in mainstream newspapers such as the UK's Telegraph and Daily Mail, as well as science channels The Unexplained Files. Bruce is currently a recurring guest expert on ancient aliens. I ask you. Yes. He's currently appearing in seasons 14 and 15. He's got 2 books, The Forgotten Exodus, The Into Africa Theory of Human Evolution, great book, forwarded by Graham Hancock, and Exogenesis, Hybrid Humans, which we will be discussing tonight. His website is brucefenton.info, and the links to his website and the book are over at jimmychurchradio.com. I'd like to welcome back to Fade to Black, Bruce R. Fenton. You got to have the R in there, Bruce.
Yeah, I just I thought it looks good for the cover, but
it does look good.
Use it.
It does look good. It does look good. Can you turn me down in the background?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. That's the first order of radio. You know what? It always bothered me over the years when I would hear different hosts go, "Turn me down in the background. Turn me down in the background." Right? And I say it all the time now. It's just like, man, I'm that guy that I just used to just detest. But so there you go. What's shaking over there? What's going on over the pond?
Well, things have been pretty good. We've had a fairly nice spell of good weather. I mean, obviously we've got all the other the problems going on, lockdowns and all that other stuff. But the weather's been good, so I'll focus on the positive.
I just have to ask you, because over here, what I always find interesting, Bruce, is to find out what the headlines are over, going on over in England about the United States, right? Mm-hmm. And then share with you what we hear about you guys over there. We love talking about each other, Yeah, we just never let it go, right? 220 years, and we're still going at it. But the reports about the protests that have extended over into the UK and London specifically, coming off of what happened here in Minneapolis and in the United States, but you guys are pulling down statues and throwing them in rivers, and I saw the reports of looks like Winston Churchill, right, and things pretty intense. And what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely has spread from the US to here. I mean, absolutely, yeah, we've had the same scenario where supposedly we were in a lockdown, and then it was not okay to protest against that, but now it's sort of seems to be sort of okay to protest against any kind of discrimination. You can go out, thousands of you can gather for that. That's kind of okay. Nobody's really explained what the science is on why supposedly one protest is bad, another protest is good. But yeah, it's been tearing down statues. They've started doing that here as well. I mean, I have mixed views myself. I mean, I understand, look, I have slave ancestry and I'm mixed race, right? So I understand, I can get it. But at the same time, I prefer these kind of statues moved to a museum, right? Into an appropriate place. We don't necessarily need to go all the way to going nuts. But I think it's to do with being locked down for so long, Jimmy. I think the same there. It was a perfect storm. People locked down for ages, couldn't go out. Then something happens to trigger them. They all sort of get a bit wild, right? So that's been the same scenario here. I think we've got that overlap. It's both coming out of a lockdown, then there's a trigger event, and it's kind of everyone's gone a bit nuts. Yeah,
absolutely right. And that's a whole nother show. But I definitely feel that the two, as crazy as it sounds, are definitely connected. You look, it doesn't matter. The protests that are going on are needed. Absolutely 100% needed. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's it. I get it, and I understand why they are doing it. And it's of course George Floyd and that video and his death paramount. But that's just the last thing that has happened. We have a lot of history across the United States and around this planet of things in the past, and that nobody feels comfortable talking about because it was just completely wrong. Wrong. Okay?
Yeah.
But putting that aside, with the coronavirus, and you lock up the entire planet, it doesn't take anything to ignite, right? No, this happened to be a real big deal that ignited it, and there was no way that these protests weren't going to happen. But I'm here to tell you, it wouldn't take much of anything else that would make that would get people angry normally. That they're going to itch to get out of their house. This time around, it's for good reason. I mean, it's for a great reason.
It's definitely, there's, my view of it is that, of course, we've got loads of issues that need to be resolved, particularly if we all want to go into a better world. But at the same time, I'm aware that, with all these kind of things, that you've always got the co-opting, you've always got the agenda in the background. So you always be careful that whenever you have a movement of people, that it doesn't get co-opted by influencers in the background that have the money and power, and that's always the problem with these kind of any kind of situation where the public rises up and gets annoyed enough to really shout about it. There's always people who'd like to co-opt that for their own good. So I just hope that people are careful, how they go about organizing.
Yeah, stay focused. Stay on message. No question about that. And you're right. It's the other interesting part, which actually is kind of like what your book is about, where you have alternate history, you have people with agendas, you never know what the truth is. And with this, the people that want to go and piggyback on this, co-opt, right?
Yep.
And piggyback on this with their own agenda, just because they want to grasp the moment. And it's just like, well, hold on a minute here. We're already confused enough about coronavirus. What caused it? What didn't cause it? Is it safe to go out? Isn't it? Do we have to? We have our jobs. We have to feed our kids. We got to make sure that the rent is paid, mortgage is paid, car payments paid. Your electric bill is paid, but you don't have a job, right? It's just like we got real issues here on the table, and people are confused about this. And they're being told different stories. And I've said it a million times, Bruce, and I've said it with you. I've said it with you. We've talked about this before. If you've ever wanted to wear a conspiracy hat, now's the time. Today.
Yes. Yeah.
Today's the time.
Christ, look, since recently, conspiracy theorists, we've never had better company, because now there's all kinds of scientists and doctors and politicians. They're all getting called conspiracy theorists, right? Because of the things to do with the economic situation, the virus situation. All sorts of people that weren't going along with the government views, have been called conspiracy theorists. So it's no longer just the likes of us. There's PhD scientists that are getting driven off YouTube because they're not agreeing and stuff like. It's been crazy. It's been really crazy.
Yeah, I've thought about that. I don't want with everything else. Look, it's not only like with coronavirus, right? You can't say COVID and a different
conspiracy network.
Yeah, you can't do it. You can't do it. They have all of these bots and analytics that are running for video and audio and picking up on keywords, and there are things that you cannot say. Or you're going to get censored, you're going to get pulled down, you're going to lose your channel. And they've already been doing it on the subjects of UFOs or conspiracy theories. Anything that goes against the grain, your channel's going to get throttled, your post is going to get throttled, you're going to be held back. And it's a mild form of censorship, but you do see it. And I've gone through it, and right now, like I said, you really want proof of the man controlling the narrative. You really want proof of that? Look what's going on right now, because you don't know the truth. You don't know the truth. You don't know the truth. No network out there is telling the same story as the network next to them. It's all different.
And things have changed. One day you're getting advice from, one team that's supposedly reliable. The next day, the opposite advice is given to you. And I think, in a way, that's done. Some of that's obviously accidental. Some of it's deliberate, I think, because, you keep someone confused all the time, that they sort of mentally break, they weaken, because they're trying to follow the best advice, but then you're trying to believe two things at once. It's like an Orwell situation where you've got double think, where you're trying to believe you shouldn't wear masks and you should wear masks, at the same time. And you're trying to believe that you should isolate and you should go out for walks. So that was one of the things we've had continually in the last few months, is this conflicting story where you've got absolute opposite things coming from different experts, right? And I think that's kind of mentally damaging in a way, because people are really trying to follow stuff, right?
Yeah, they're trying to figure it out.
Go to another news channel, and it's completely different.
Yeah. They're trying to figure it out, and then you go and do this. You're supposed to be at home. You're supposed to be social distancing, or the world's going to come crashing down to an end, and we're all going to die. So that scares the crap out of everybody, right?
Sure.
So much so that we give up our jobs and our freedoms. But yet, all of a sudden, it's okay to put tens of thousands of people in the street, elbow to elbow. Wait a minute here. Yeah. Now, I agree with the protest. I'm saying it's the message from the man. Just like today, I literally posted up two headlines today. One was from Fox, one was from CNN. I'm not going to say who is who. But one headline says, Russian nuclear-capable bombers intercept U.S. aircraft near Alaska. Second headline, at the same time, says, U.S. intercepts Russian bombers and fighter jets off of the coast of Alaska.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute here.
Yeah.
Wait.
Total opposites.
It's like, and that's what's going on. You know, I pay attention. I jump from news service to news service to news service to news service. I have to do that because I vet my stories and I double check and double check and double check. And I will go back and see 180-degree shift. I mean, it's like the opposite. And I've nearly given up. I've nearly given up.
We've had as well. Keep in mind that we came first through the whole of the Brexit thing. And as you know, that's dragged on and on and on. With that being the major news story for months and months here. And then it went, of course, straight into the virus, and then it was the economy, and now it's the protest. So, I mean, I think people have been mentally quite shattered.
You guys are not immune to anything. Right now, let's not forget. I mean, seriously, when Brexit was going down, let me tell you, you can talk about the UK all you want in the headlines, okay? And I'm sure it was pretty gnarly. They were equally as gnarly around the world. The end is nigh. If Britain separates from the European Union, it's over. The world economy is going to collapse. Everything's going to fall down inside of Europe. Nothing's going to be left. The world's going to be left in tatters. It's going to be a smoke-filled Armageddon.
Huge deal.
Right. What happened to that?
Right? Yeah, it vanished. Right? It vanished. That's the thing with these stories. They just kind of melt away, which is the crazy thing, because you know, the virus stories now obviously are falling out of the headlines really fast, whereas it was constant. Now it's switched across to the protests. You know, again, it's really baffling because you think like it's these major stories, and they just seem to just evaporate when the next one comes along. You know, and it doesn't really make sense because, you know, if they're that big an issue, right, they're still there then, you know, because we're still in the Brexit process. You know, we're still supposed to have the virus. You know, we still have. So it's weird the way it just kind of fades away. Yeah, and suddenly we were able to pay out the equivalent of like a Brexit pullout every week, you know, because of the economic situation. Whereas before we were saying, how are we going to survive Brexit? And now we're like losing more money a week than we were going to lose from Brexit. You know, so it's kind of crazy. I mean, it really is crazy.
Now, economically, Brexit was already a big question mark on, and I've got a lot of friends over in the UK. And Brexit was a big conversation between a friend of mine. His name's Mark, and he owns a big company outside of London. And I was with him back in January, and I was like, so dude, you know, what's happening? What's going on? What's going to be, you know? And he was struggling, and he was worried. And he was worried about trade and exports and imports and duties and things and all of his customers that are all across Europe, all the way into Russia, right? It's like a big deal. And then coronavirus. How is the economy? I mean, how was it going into coronavirus? Were things okay? Or
we were okay. I think people were kind of surprised that it hadn't gone as badly as, you know, worst predictions. I guess with the models again, you know, these models we keep getting, but it hadn't got as bad as they suspected. But now we're looking at having the worst economic impact from the lockdown than any other country, as far as I know. At the moment, we're like number one in the world for how deep our recession is expected to be. You know, worse than the US, worse than Spain. So that's been a disaster. You know, a real disaster beyond Brexit, really. I mean, I think we'll probably looking back and thinking Brexit didn't sound so bad now because really, this has been the problem. And like you say, though, those companies are worrying about what were they going to do with Brexit. Now they've got Brexit plus, you know, the coronavirus. So a lot of those companies are, I think, game over. If you were trading in Europe, you've had to lock down all this time, and you know that you're going to deal with the Brexit problems, you're more likely to fold, you know, and go for a new business because it's like, well, you know, if you're trading in Europe, I don't see how, you know, you can cope after all this, and then you've got that coming, right? So I think we're going to lose a lot. They've said up to 40% of small businesses may fold. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
Same thing here. You know what? It's the same thing in every country. Yeah. Nobody has got some kind of Superman guard up, you know, that's is going to make them safe. It doesn't work that way. And when you think about the exports that come out of not only China, but South Korea and Samsung and all of the people have to have money to buy those things so you can manufacture, so you can export. It's just not that kind of party.
People are going to cut back. They're going to be, cutting back on everything, and prices will probably go up. We're going to see import costs going up. Countries that won't want to export food, we're going to have lots of knock-on effects now. So, what it'll be like in 6 months, who knows?
Yeah, and you know what? There was a thing. You may not be old enough. I'm old. I'm an old guy. But there was a thing for a long time here in the United States, made in the USA. Made in the USA. Tags had to say, everything had to, and slowly everything started to go over to China. But we had this pride here, made in the USA. And I'm here to tell you, if the memory stays about coronavirus, the pollination of the idea, I'm just saying of the idea that this was caused by China, either directly or through negligence, right? No matter what, you only have to just put the germ of the idea out there. That's it, right? So if that stays, do you think that people in the United States are going to want to buy products from China? Do you think it's a cool thing to do, to order products from China, to have manufacturing done in China? Do you think people are going to feel good about it, or their customers? Right? Wait a minute. You make this stuff in China? What? I'm telling you, and I don't want to be one of those guys that causes issues and causes problems. I'm just stating the obvious, man. Stating the obvious.
When you think about it, all those, it got down to the point where, the American flags were made in China. I mean, is anyone going to be waving, an American flag they ordered from China? I mean, I don't see that. It's kind of got to that point where right.
Is Trump going to make his MAGA hats for the election coming up? Are those going to be made in China?
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is something people are going to start questioning, and I think it's good because also I'd like to see people questioning where all of our stuff comes from, right, Jimmy? Because this is another social problem. I mean, look, I know that I've probably got stuff in my house, right, that's made by probably some child slave in a factory in China or in Africa. And I think like that idea of where are we buying, if that becomes more of an issue, maybe we will look a bit deeper and start saying, are we ethically, morally sourcing things, from where we should be and where we shouldn't be. So that's not a bad conversation to start. You know what I mean? I think that's something we do. I watched the show the other day, and those kids were basically slaves on the Ivory Coast of Africa picking cocoa. And they said that about 2/5 of the world cocoa is coming from there. And this kid was saying, when you eat your chocolate, you're eating my flesh. Just remember that. You're thinking, what the heck? What is wrong here? That this is the situation where so much of our products is coming from even people on almost no money or slavery or, regimes that you wouldn't want to live in, right? So, I think we have to have that conversation. With all this stuff's going on, we need to start thinking, well, what is the ethical sourcing of the things that we have in our homes? Yeah,
it'll be back to made in Japan. That's what you want to see. That's the label you want to see. I used to make these jokes, and when we come back after the break, everybody, don't worry, we'll be discussing hybrid humans. I love talking to Bruce and just having an open conversation. But I used to make jokes. I used to go, oh man, you need those little tiny fingers to pull the coffee beans off. You need those little tiny fingers, those little talented fingers to pull the cocoa beans. You need those little tiny fingers in China to make these telephones. You need that. They make, I used to make jokes about it, and it was, whatever, funny, haha. And to be honest, it's one thing when life is good. Life is good. Life is good. The planet is good. Everything's funny. and comedy, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But when we really stop and look at the reality of the situation, where I think that not only do we need to be more sensitive, and we should, but coronavirus enabled us to slow down and see the pollution stop. See the skies are clear, right? That it can be manipulated. We can control that. We can spend more time with our families. We can stay home and cook. We don't need to necessarily work as hard as we've been working, that we can stop and think about other things. We can go back to work, but let's come up with another economic model that works for everybody. There's a lot of different wars. Do we really need wars? Nobody's at war right now.
Right?
Yeah. Do we really need this stuff? Do we really need to kill each other? Do we really need crime? Do we need this stuff, everybody? Right? It enabled us to stop and just slow down. Just slow down for a second. This is an opportunity that we didn't want to have. We didn't want to have to go through this, but it's the cards that we were dealt. And it is forcing us to take a hard look at our actions from the past and an opportunity right now on a better way forward. And that's a good thing.
Absolutely. So it's I always think with any of these things that happen, it's a mix of the good and the bad, and then you have to kind of, and also the mix of what we want as a species and what the 0.1%, want us to do. And like, we always have to find that middle way, where we get through that and towards a better position, because of course there's always going to be negative influences. There's always going to be, the conspiracy side of it, right? There's always going to be that. But if we're clever, we can use these kind of setbacks to become steps instead of setbacks, and step up to another level. It's just being aware of what can go wrong, how you could be co-opted, where those influences are. And as long as you navigate carefully, when these problems hit, they can be opportunities for change for the better. And I think that's where we now have to formulate what is the change for the better, and without it turning into us getting tricked by the man kind of thing. But as long as we're careful, we can use these opportunities to actually get somewhere. And I'm hopeful that we will. I think overall, that that we'll probably use the opportunity in the best way.
Yes, let's take our break right here, live from the United Kingdom. Bruce R. Fenton is with us. When we come back, we will discuss his new book, which is out, Exogenesis, Human Hybrids, A Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation, co-authored with his wife, Daniella. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Again, visit ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Introducing the new Surfer Music app. Listen, Fade or not, you know I love my music. This is my go-to for all things notes. The Surfer app is a brand new concept in music listening. Surfer is free, providing unlimited access to thousands of live streaming radio stations. Surfer is an exciting, interactive listening experience. Discovery and surprise are built right in. Surfer is your destination to discover and rediscover great live streaming music. It features high-quality audio streams, free access to music from thousands of live streaming radio stations, unlimited listening, unlimited skipping. You get a music visualizer, and you can also select your favorite channels. Get it at the Apple App Store or Google Play. Just search Surfer Music or click on the Surfer banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Go Beckley Tappy.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com. Or to speak with a trained consultant. Give Angioprim a call at 954-882-7221. That's 954-882-7221.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We're also Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright-Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Bruce R. Fenton, live from the United Kingdom. We are discussing his new book. It is called Exogenesis, Human Hybrids, A Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation. And I've read the book. It's an excellent book. It's an excellent read. The links for it are over at jimmychurchradio.com. And I am actually, Bruce, I am going to start right here. Darwin. We're going to start. Let's start there. And,
that old guy.
Yeah, and I hear something in the background. It's loud. It sounds like an air conditioner.
I'll move.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, man, this is live radio, everybody. I apologize. Okay, Bruce. I only say that for the audience. Okay. So now, let's start with Darwin. Yep. In that, was Darwin? Okay. Are we settled in?
Sorry, yeah, I just moved back a bit. That was all. Yep.
Okay, we're good. Was Darwin wrong?
Well, he's right and wrong. I suppose he's right in the respect that we do see random mutations, we see natural selection, we see those core things, in the evolutionary story, and of course that evolution happens, which I suppose probably the main takeaway from Darwin's theory that, over time we do get new species appearing, that life is not a constant in that respect. Okay, but then conversely, and he admitted this at the time. He didn't have all the information. So he understood that his theory wasn't going to be the final say, right? Because he didn't have DNA evidence. He didn't have all of that technology back then. So he was aware that he probably didn't have the whole story. Obviously, now we know that there's more to it than just random selection. There's things like feedback loops in the environment, where we have DNA being reprogrammed within a lifetime, through epigenetics. So obviously that's new. We also realize that DNA can do some really clever things, almost kind of rewriting itself to a degree. There's things that he wouldn't have understood. We have viruses that can, again, virus topic, but we have viruses that can infect an organism, and those viruses can bring new information in, which can actually cause leaps and stuff in evolution. Okay, so if you think about it, the core stuff, yes, but some of the other aspects he didn't know about. So I think we can give him like a B- or something, right? Pretty good, but there's needs to rewrite parts of that model, and some people don't want to. The hardcore Darwinists, they don't really like to have any criticism of him at all.
Yeah, and there is for me, and I'm not a PhD, right? I'm not an anthropologist. I'm not a biologist. I don't. But I do have eyeballs, and I am able to study and research a few things. And I just step back, and before I get to us, right, Homo sapien sapien, which is the conversation we're going to have tonight, I will look at some of the obvious things in front of us, like sharks. Why aren't they driving cars today? Monkeys, chimpanzees, apes. Why has that evolution stopped? And I can go on and on and on before we go, well, what about Darwin's finch? The beak changed a little bit. That's not enough for me. I don't see the evolutionary changes that should have gone on dramatically over tens of millions of years of species that are exactly the same today as they were 10, 20 million years ago. And I don't see those changes. And then I look at the human race, Homo sapien sapien, and we have issues with the fossil record. We have issues with the fossil record across all species. Right, yeah. But when we look at us and our DNA sequencing, it appears that some pretty miraculous things were altered in our DNA that couldn't have happened naturally, number one. Number two, it appears, and I know that you go back 800,000 years, and we're going to talk about that, but it appears that 200,000 years ago, we just appeared here. We absolutely just appeared. What happened before that? We're going to be discussing that tonight for sure. But that's a difficult thing for anthropologists to discuss. They want to say, well, we know that it can happen, and we know how it does happen. We don't have the proof of it yet. We don't know and can't explain different chromosomes in DNA and how those alterations happen. We don't know about that. We don't know why we're 46 and primates are 48. Well, but it's happened, and it's nothing freaky. That's kind of their answer. They don't want to go outside of the box, do they?
No, they don't. And, even with very glaring problems, and as you touched on one there, that we have some creatures like the crocodile or the coelacanth. The coelacanth was going to say they thought this fish was extinct for millions of years or whatever. Turns out, it was still, not only was it still alive, but it hadn't changed in like millions of years. And it's like they call it a living fossil. Obviously, crocodiles, they've been around for millions of years as well. They barely changed. We find these giant-sized crocodile fossils, but basically the same. And then there's other creatures that seem to have evolved, really fast. So obviously there's a lot of strangeness there. The idea of this constant evolution. Why is it that some species are just literally stuck in first gear, in neutral or something like that? And then others that supposedly have gone rapidly evolving. And then on top of that, though, if you think about one of the really glaring issues is that if you have gradual steps forward, slow mutations. Now think of something like the wing of a bird, right? How useful is it just to have two stubs sticking out the side of you, right? There's a point where they become useful, right? But in the meanwhile, what you'd have instead is two lumps of flesh that other animals can grab you by, and which are causing you to burn off extra energy that they do no good for you, right? They're actually a hazard, a total hazard. You're running around with these half-formed wings, right? They don't do you any good. Now, if we are having, beneficial changes, and that's supposedly what drives evolution, is you have a mutation. If it's beneficial, it stays. If it's not, it is lost again because those creatures get killed off. But we have things like the wing, which don't make any sense in that context, because they should have just disappeared again, because before you get to a full wing, they're useless. Yeah, you can't fly, they're useless. Same as the eye, right? What is the in-between between being able to see and not being able to see, right? That's a big jump, isn't it? A whole other sense that appears out of nowhere. Right, what's the in-between of an eye? Is it just a hole in your face, right? I mean, there has to be, there's something else going on here, right? Because some of these characteristics of animals, you can see that they wouldn't appear gradually. They were either there or they weren't, right? Because they only become useful once they're fully formed. So that's not really easy for mainstream scientists to tackle, because, they don't have an easy answer for how you can explain sudden leaps.
Well, and the other part, and I look at it two different ways. The other part that's very difficult to explain is after every mass extinction event, and we've had 5 or 6 confirmed, where virtually, where we're talking about 90%, 85, 90% of everything on the planet is gone. But then in very short order, new species and species are created, tens of thousands. And there isn't any time for the Darwin version of evolution to have taken place, right? That these species just miraculously appear in mass. And it's happened over and over and over again. So that's one way to look at it. The second way to look at it, and they kind of go hand in hand, is that here on Earth, you can't stop life. You can't stop it. Life, for some reason, right? You have a forest fire, a field burns down. It's nothing but carbon, right? Nothing but carbon. Everything's burnt. And 6 months later, it's growing. Life is there. And not only with the plants, but it's the return of the animal. Everything just wants to grow and thrive here on this planet. And so do the two of them go hand in hand? It's very difficult to stop life here.
The cycles of destruction and rebirth are continual, aren't they? Obviously we see, particularly one of the massive issues in the story as well, of course, is this sudden appearance of vast numbers of life forms during the Cambrian explosion, when you just had this amazing, they call it explosion of new life forms. And that's another one that has been a struggle for mainstream scientists to explain, because there's no signs of their precursors. They just, like you said earlier, things that just appear out of nowhere almost in the fossil record. And some of those species had literally no other species, in the past that could even be considered there, because they're just completely unique lineages that just appeared out of nowhere. So that's been another problem. So there's clearly some really huge holes. One thing I like is when you look at things like, have you ever seen that wasp that lays its egg on a tarantula? Have you seen that? As you think about stuff like that, if we're thinking of this logical process where, the one with the best idea or the best development wins, how can it be the best idea that you need to lay your egg on a deadly tarantula? That's, you start thinking, like, where does that come about? All the places to lay it, you try and lay it on a tarantula that can eat you, right? And you look at stuff like that, you just think that's almost like someone having a joke with you, right? To say, look, we'll throw up a few red herrings in here, get them to think, get them to question this story, because it doesn't make any sense. You've got caterpillar that looks like a crocodile. It's got the design of a crocodile. Things like that, you just think, like, why? Why would that have evolved? Because obviously it can't pass for a crocodile, right? It's only a caterpillar. There's stuff like that you have to sort of think, it's almost like, I don't know, someone toying with you, sense of, well, why? Why would that be a natural, leap? And what's the benefit there? So I think there's a lot of these glaring flags.
Yeah, there is. 65 million years ago, if that asteroid doesn't hit Earth, are we left to think that the dinosaurs would be going through an evolutionary process, and today they would be building radio telescopes?
Well, there are people that do, wonder that if they even did get to a point where they were at least, some kind of civilization, and that's not impossible. It sounds crazy, but it's not impossible, because if they didn't get to, I think someone said, they went extinct because they didn't have a space program, right? But,
right. I'm not playing about this. Yes. I'm not playing around about this.
No, and the thing is, they could have got to a certain point in terms of a basic civilization. There may have been humanoid dinosaurs that had a civilization. This was in a recent study, and they said, would we be able to detect that? And they actually realized that you probably couldn't, because it's so long ago that it is possible the dinosaurs did have a kind of evolutionary thing. Because we don't find the fossils of every species, right? You have to be quite lucky to find a fossil, because it takes a lot of perfect conditions for it to end up fossilized. So, you can miss a whole species. So let's say there was a humanoid dinosaur race and it had a basic civilization, even if it was to say how we were 5,000 years ago or something, right? If they were hit by a meteorite, there's nothing they could do about it, and we wouldn't find anything of that. And that's what they came to the conclusion of. It's so long ago that you wouldn't find a trace of a civilization like that. It's only once you get to the level like we are, where you can modify the geology, you can do open mines and things that you could find, right? But if you don't get to a technological level, you could have a civilization of, reptile-like humanoids that existed millions of years ago and they're all wiped out. And that's kind of crazy. And they realize that, that is theoretically possible. Much as that might sound like weird to a lot of people, they do think that is in theory possible.
Now, when we look at, I brought up the 200,000 year number for Homo sapiens sapien only because that's part of our educational system.
Sure.
This is where things are established, and trying to figure out if there's a crossover with Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal and whatever. And
it's been a big focus.
And it should be there. But nonetheless, your research goes back much, much, much farther than that, which is controversial in of itself. So the 800,000 year number, when today human hybrids and a human hybrid program is widely discussed. We talked about it on Monday night with Nadine Laidlich. I've had many guests on the show discussing this. Your number is 800,000 years. So let's kind of start there, can we?
Sure. Yeah. And I'll just very quickly, just following what you said there, just very quickly, just to caveat that, when we talk about the period from 200,000 onwards, that's more starting to focus in on what we think of as modern, like you said, Homo sapiens sapiens, modern humans. But Homo sapiens goes back way earlier, and that's really where I'm coming in at, the idea that what we call Homo sapiens has a lineage that goes back to around about 800,000 years ago. I say 780. I'm sort of fairly stickler on that, but essentially, you can trace it back. And look, this is not just me. I mean, what's happened in the last few years is the entire field has begun to shift that way, and that was caused by the discovery of a whole load of remains in Spain at a site called Cima de los Huesos, which means the pit of bones, basically, right? And they found there DNA that went back to 430,000 years ago, and it eventually turned out that the humans that it was from are early Neanderthals, and they managed to, from that, they extract the genome, they did the full genome, they did all of that, they contrasted with Denisovan and modern human DNA and all of that good stuff. And what they basically realized was that it pushed back the dates way back, and it showed that Neanderthals and us had kind of split a lot earlier than they'd thought, which meant that the origins of the two went back to closer to sort of between 700 and 800,000 years ago. And that's where that started happening. And then separately, there was a study that was looking at the fossils from around Europe, and I think from further afield into Africa and Europe. And they realized that looking at particularly the dentistry, but aspects of the skull, that it looked like the evolution of Homo sapiens as well. Yeah, that the split went back to around 800 or 900,000 years ago or so. So the DNA and the fossils in the last few years have both pushed that date way back from where it used to be thought that, somewhere between 200 and 400,000 years ago that we'd had this split with the Neanderthals. Now that's pushed way back. So we now realize there's a common lineage for us, Neanderthals, Denisovans, from an ancestor that lived around 800,000 years ago. So that's been a kind of a massive rewrite, and that's just in the last sort of 3 years, really. That's been a massive rewrite in the understanding of how those large-brained human lineages have all come about and when they separated. So that's been the big change there.
And when we start to question what this reality actually means, are we talking about intelligence? Are we talking about, things that don't remind us of, Stone Age primitive man? Are we talking about a species that talked, had language, had technology, thought about things, did things that were creative, were thinkers? And just recently, over the last year, are these caves outside of Tel Aviv, 400,000 years in the dating, that apparently have evidence of cooking, of the use of fire, of hearths, of burials, right? Burials, like intentional, gravestones. And now that's when I go, you know what, now we're talking here. This isn't something where they were banging stones together to eat and rolling around in the dirt. That this is something else altogether, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And that's really where I say that the Homo sapiens, really, it means, obviously the thinking man. I mean, that really we go back much further than was thought there. Way back beyond just the modern humans. Like modern humans, there are shifts, that make us different yet again, more recently. But when we start looking back, we do realize that there was a lot of what we would think of as modern behavior, that, like you said, like the use of rituals, spiritual beliefs, all of that. There's evidence of that. And, tool manufacturing that's more radically, it requires more intelligence. Glue processing they found. I mean, recently they found the earliest threads, and those seem to be from Neanderthals. And all sorts of stuff is being rewritten. We realize they're sailing way earlier than we thought. Because it used to be thought, right, that the first boats, the first use of any kind of sailing, canoes, whatever it was they used, was around about 50,000 years ago with modern humans, down in Southeast Asia, going across to Australia, right? But now we know that there's evidence on islands in the Mediterranean and off the coast of Africa and other places that we were sailing hundreds of thousands of years ago, right? In fact, at least 700,000 years ago or so, that we were already having to cross bodies of water. So, I mean, look, I think immediately you have to think, how do you convince a lot of people to go with you across the sea? I mean, if you can't speak or in some way communicate, how are you going to convince people just to go out into the ocean with you, right? So you have to start thinking there must be communication to organize something like a mass trip across water to an island, right? Because you can't just wave your arms around and screaming, right? Yeah, exactly. And everyone just follows you off into the water. I mean, it doesn't really make sense unless there's a communication of some sort. Now, it may only be some clicks and whistles, and it might be hand signs. We don't know what the first communication would have been like. Probably was a lot more simple than we have. And in fact, clicks and whistles is quite likely because we know that there's still languages that are like that. In fact, the Khoisan, they have a click and whistle language, right, which has persisted to modern times. Down in Australia, there was a click-based language that I think may have faded out now, but there definitely was one up until modern times. And down in South America, towards Tierra del Fuego, they also seems to be one. So these I think are the remnants of the first languages, because you can imagine they copied bird noises, animal sounds, used some clicking, whistling. You don't need to be able to speak, right? But you can convey a lot of information from that. Like, and if you're out hunting, those kind of noises are really useful because you can copy animal stuff, so you don't surprise your game, right? So they're kind of, you can imagine these naturally evolving ways of communicating in the field hunting and stuff, right? So I think that we probably had a basic communication going back to that really early point, 700,000 years ago. So when we began to cross water, particularly, because I just can't see that you can construct, get your logboat and then you expect everyone else to do it and follow you, unless you're convincing them that we're going somewhere, and you're not going to just die out there, that there's an island or something. How else do you get them to follow you, right?
Well, it's one thing to push back the evolutionary process with early humans. That's one thing, and that is definitely open to discussion. But bringing in an alien off-world intervention into this process, that's a whole other thing altogether.
Sure.
So how do we introduce alien or ET contact into this?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously from the mainstream view, it's been enough for them just to have to push back their dates. I think that's been traumatic enough, without any consideration of there being an artificial intervention in any of this, right? Indeed, I think just the fact that in my work, I place the major events of this story down in Australia, and you can imagine that really doesn't gel well with the holy cow of out of Africa. I mean, again, because supposedly everything of importance in our story really is in Africa until about 50,000 years ago, according to the mainstream view. So I'm really changing the whole basis of that story, the location, the dating, and then how it's come about. Now, we know today that there are cultures all around the world that tell us that they believe that there was an intervention event. That's not new. I think almost any continent on the planet other than Antarctica, I think you'll find that story is told, right? That there's been visitation, or there's alien gods, or there's interdimensional beings that kind of interact. And in a lot of those stories, there is a kind of a process involving DNA or genetics or interbreeding. And that's a recurring theme, the idea even of shamanism, of spirit families and spirit wives, and that's really old stuff. That goes back to, as far as we know, it goes back to the beginning of when we were able to convey stories, when we were able to understand what was going on, that we've been having these experiences and we've been having some kind of contact, that it's not new. Now, on top of that, if you accept the intuitive abilities of human beings, the sort of psychical capacities, we also know from people that have those sort of skills that they often tap into information that reflects the same thing, or they encounter beings, entities, what they call those aliens, spirits, ghosts, whatever, that also seem to share that information to them, right? This theme keeps coming up, saying there's been this visitation, there's been, there's this program of some sort, a modification and hybrid program. Now, my work is a little bit different because I don't focus too much on what we'd call, I suppose, that modern phenomena, like the abductions and, the seeming extraction of DNA and the making of hybrids that appears to be happening in the current events, right? Obviously we're going back long ago, but what that suggests is that this is a process that, is still happening. There's still some kind of interest in us for our DNA and where we're going. But, I looked at this, quite differently, because although I had knowledge of that, and we've had some experiences myself, to be honest, my wife's a contactee, she's had a lot of experiences. I've had some, experiences. So we're very aware of the modern phenomena, but what happened to us, of course, we got involved in a case we came out of Australia, where there's in fact a group of people who interacted with an artifact there, which is called a Chiringa. Now, Chiringa, someone pointed out to me, it sounds awfully like the Ark of the Covenant. You've got these kind of, looks almost like stone tablets, right? They have engravings on. They're highly sacred. They're not supposed to be shown to people. They're supposed to be kept by the clever men, which is kind of like the shamans. But they believe to reside, a kind of a higher consciousness in them, and wisdom and knowledge in them. And I was saying that to somebody on the show, and they said it sounds like the Ark of the Covenant. The tablets that are given to them, right? They put in the Ark of the Covenant, which is kind of funny, because that's the same kind of story. It says, the priests have to look after them, that God can speak through it. He says, the communication will be direct from sort of the Ark, right? And that there is, engravings on it, that they're carried around and hidden, only brought out by the high priest. And I hadn't really clicked it before, and so I said, it sounds sort of like this, very similar. It's made me wonder if we don't have these similar artifacts given to different groups, really early in time, that they're left here.
Well, let me jump in right there, Bruce. We got to take a break. We'll pick up right where we are when we come back. Our guest tonight, Bruce R. Fenton. We are talking about his new book, Exogenesis, Human Hybrids, A Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. Introducing the new Surfer Music app. Listen, Fadernauts, you know I love my music. This is my go-to for all things notes. The Surfer app is a brand new concept in music listening. Surfer is free, providing unlimited access to thousands of live streaming radio stations. Surfer is an exciting interactive listening experience. Discovery and surprise are built right in. Surfer is your destination to discover and rediscover great live streaming music. It features high-quality audio streams, free access to music from thousands of live streaming radio stations, unlimited listening, unlimited skipping. You get a music visualizer, and you can also select your favorite channels. Get it at the Apple App Store or Google Play. Just search Surfer Music or click on the Surfer banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
If you have hard water, the lime scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate lime scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Are you intrigued by paranormal talk radio? You'll love the new paranormal radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the paranormal radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the paranormal radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Simple enough. And before we move forward, Bruce, what's your Twitter?
Yes. So if people want to follow me on there, it's Exogenesis and then HH, like for hybrid humans. Exogenesis HH.
There you go. We've got it up in Twitter, and you can go and click and follow Bruce. The book is called Exogenesis, Hybrid Humans, A Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation, co-authored with his wife, Daniella. And right before the break, the links for the book are over at jimmychurchradio.com. You can just click. It's an excellent read. We left off right before the break. We were talking about some evidence that similar to the tablets, and the with Moses and the Ten Commandments. And have you seen evidence of these tablets?
Well, I've got the evidence in terms of an indirect way, and I'll tell you how that is. What happened was there was a lady, well, it still is, I say was, she's still alive. There's a lady called Valerie Barrow that's based out in Australia. She's a past life regression therapist and an intuitive. She had a really strange situation back in the early 90s where she had named her house Alturinga, which is an Aboriginal word which means basically it's equivalent to what we think of as the dream time or the beginning time, right? In the Arrente language. And she just chose that because she thought it was a nice word, she's not actually indigenous. And then this lady in turn said that, because of the name of your house, I feel like you are the person I have to ask to look after this artifact, this ancient artifact, while I go into hospital for some treatment for a serious condition. I've got to leave it with somebody, and I really feel like maybe you're meant to look after it. So it's one of those weird, synchronicities, I guess, that happens if you work in holistic and, she's obviously a past-life regression therapist and intuitive. So you accept things that are strange if you work in those kind of areas, right? Because strange things happen to people working as psychics, regression therapists, and all that stuff. So she took it on board. She said, I'll look after it, And this object was wrapped up in paper bark, which is the bark of the paper tree. There's a tree in Australia. It looks like paper, just falls off of it, if anyone's familiar with that. But so it was wrapped up in this paper bark. And then so she put it in a box, put it away. The lady said, not to look on it. You're not supposed to touch this thing. So she's put it in a box, kept it in a spare room, and thought nothing of it at first, right? She just thought, okay, kind of strange, but she was happy to help out. And then within a very short period, she started having essentially a discarnate voice directly speaking into her mind, right? So you think of it as me going crazy or something, but she had this voice, and it was telling her that it was called Alturinga, and that it was a being from the dream time, the beginning time, the creation of humans, when all the things began, and was telling her this whole history of humanity in a lost period where there'd been a visitation, that there'd been modifications. And so she started, he said, you're going to have to write a book. And he's telling her. So she's like writing this stuff down, recording everything that comes through. But the other if that's not crazy enough, the other thing that it said was you're going to meet other people and they're going to also remember this. And you're going to find there's people that have lived a life before that was connected with this, and they're going to remember it. Right. And in the end, she ended up connecting with about 30 or 40 different people, some through her work, some through the regression therapies, but some just random people, some were friends of hers. And it turns out that they would remember bits of this story of this craft coming here, and that each one of them had a piece of the puzzle, and it meshed with what this entity, this voice, had been telling her, and literally had a kind of, a confirmation. You've got, on the one hand, you've got a strange voice talking to you. So you might think, have you gone crazy? But then you're meeting people and they're saying to you, I remember being on the ship, or I remember being one of the beings on the earth that actually shot the ship down, right? That really strange stuff. Now, okay, I'm giving you a bit of leaping ahead there, but essentially the core story was that there was an arrival to this planet through a Stargate from the Pleiades, and that this large ship containing 50,000 beings arrived here. And we're talking, all the way hundreds of thousands of years back. And obviously, I've since dated this to 780,000. But, so hundreds of thousands of years ago, and telling her that, after the destruction of a ship, a few survivors came down, and that they later began modifying an early hominin species, which would lead to the creation of Homo sapiens. Now, you could say, okay, is it just crazy sci-fi? And it would have been maybe left like that if I hadn't personally, looked at that and thought, for my own reasons, because of experiences I've had and my wife's had and context, that, I felt that this was real, but I wondered, could it be substantiated with objective evidence? Because, you get all these accounts, right? Like psychic messages, channeling, contact accounts, and usually you can't validate them. You just have to take it or not. And a lot of people say, does it vibrate with you or whatever, right? But I thought, well, hey, but, it'd be nice to have at least one where you can say, no, let's not just take it as, if it vibes with you, go with it. But actually to have objective scientific evidence where you can go to your friends or, to your partner and say, you've always thought I'm crazy. Well, look, this time there's actually evidence, right? Because I think everyone's at that point where they want that, right? They get tired of having to sort of just say, oh, well, I believe it, but I can't prove it. And so that's where I deep dived in. I actually was able to find the substantiating evidence that supports the core elements of that story, that a ship came here, was blown up, identified the debris, that the humans were modified, I've identified the genetic signatures, and another event they described was a multi-directional asteroid bombardment at the same time, and I've also identified that. So it was like the three biggest core aspects of the story I've been able to validate.
Now, before we get further into this and the debris field, which goes across actually continents, right?
It's huge. 20% of the Earth.
Yeah, exactly. So before we get into that, there is, for me, other things that point away from Africa these days, too, as well. And not only the Denisovan aspect of this, which is... nobody knew. Nobody knew anything about Denisovans 20 years ago, and today this is very exciting new research that is starting to play out. But I point directly at Göbekli Tepe, and the reason why I do is because not only of its age and when it was built, and we have the factual side of this, it wasn't supposed to exist. But I also look at now, not only because of the Denisovan, but I look to the north. I don't look to the south for the creation of this, the out of Africa side of things. I think that the civilizations were intelligent and high technology and came from the north and came out of Siberia and came south instead of going north, out of the central plains of Africa and Lucy and coming up through Mesopotamia and heading north. And that is direct evidence and would also suggest that you are right, that it didn't necessarily everything come out of Lucy and the Central Plains of Africa, that there is stronger evidence now that it came from the north and also came out of the Far East with Australia and Southern Asia.
Yeah, it's turning into more of what was originally called the multi-regionist theory, which was that really you've got evolution is occurring across all of the habitable lands in a way. So what you have, and in fact, again with this story, depending where you want to start, you're in a different location. So again, there's a bit of an abstract of where do we start the story? Because if you go back to the beginnings of early primates, right, like basically which was just monkeys, and I'm talking about millions of years ago now, I'm talking millions and millions, that you have those, they're down in East Asia. So if you wanted to start the story of primates, that goes to East Asia. Now, then there's a climate event, and, I think it's about 35 million years ago or so, and they begin to move. They move across into Europe. There's evolution in Europe. This goes on for millions of years, and, then they move into Africa. And so I mean, you can kind of say, well, where do you start the story, right? It all depends on what you consider as the important parts. Now, very recently, they found some fossils down in the Mediterranean area, which suggests that possibly the first hominins, the first kind of early humans, that they may have been in the Mediterranean, right, rather than Africa. But the thing is, people get very sensitive about these topics, and they shouldn't, because we are just talking about science, right? But as you know, these have become like sensitive issues, right, where if you question these stories, some people will assume straight away that you're in some way being discriminative, or you're in a hate group or something because you're questioning out of Africa. Now that shouldn't be like that. We should be able to calmly, coolly say, where's the evidence pointing to? Now, sure, there's lots of strong evidence that a great part of the story happened in Africa, right? That's still, there's a lot of it happened there. But then when we get to the bit about Homo sapiens and up to that era, when we're within the last million years, that's different, because we've already got evidence that Homo erectus, who's definitely I'd say probably the first true Homo of the Homo genus, is out and about, is all across the world by about 1.8 million years ago, right down into Southeast Asia. Okay, so you've got a potential, in fact, very likely ancestor of Homo sapiens, right? Is in Africa and is in the Middle East and is down in Southeast Asia. He's everywhere. A couple million years ago, right? So at that point, the story is no longer just African-centric. Yeah, that these different populations of Homo erectus would have been interbreeding. They would have been mixing. Sometimes they would split off. They isolate for a while in one area, and then they bump into another group. And from then on, it's more of a multi-regional story. And this is something that was always, it's kind of been a frowned on model, the multi-regional model. And it was, for a long time, it was kind of dismissed and put to the side. And it was like, no, this has been a singular story of just, millions of years in Africa. And then finally, in the last sort of 100,000 years, we've started to come out of Africa, right? And that's been the conventional story. But that has really collapsed. I mean, the honest truth is that story is really collapsing. As you said, now it looks far more like we have that going on. And then Homo sapiens, in my view, obviously what I'm arguing here, emerge down in Australasia and in that region, and then also with movements of people in East Asia. A lot of that early part of the story from around 800,000 years ago is now looking like it was in East Asia and in China, because they found a lot of what they call transitional fossils, which is between Homo erectus and us, where you can see some of the elements of our structure, our face, our bones. You can see that in fossils in China between 800,000 to 200,000 years ago. And one of the problems in Africa is, in fact, the early part, from 800,000 to 500,000 years ago. So there's not really transitional fossils. So it's like, well, where were we then, right? Where were we then? So I'm not saying that we weren't also in Africa later, because once humans move around, they spread, they move around. Well, also think of it like this way. If you can go out of Africa, you can go in. Right? And the same as if you go out of East Asia and go in. We have this kind of strange view that, it's one way. You go out and then there's migration and it just goes off somewhere. But what if the weather changes the other way, right? The climate shifts. You go back. So this model is getting more and more complex. It used to be this simple story that we were getting. And now we know it's mind-bendingly complex. And it's a lot more to do with East Asia and Australasia and these areas than we ever thought. And as you said, I mean, there's evidence of modern human populations up in the far north 50,000 years ago now, and nobody thought that anyone would be up there that early, right up into the Arctic Circle, 50,000 years ago, which it seems sort of crazy, because you think, why would people be heading up into that ice, in the harsh times in the Ice Age and stuff? But they were, we're finding evidence that they were. So this is not just part of the story that's getting rewritten, right? The whole human story, right from the Younger Dryas, the 13,000 years ago, the mysterious events then, all the way back to the origins of our species. There's I'd say there's a huge rewrite that's going on, underway through all of it.
Are we suggesting that there was constant alien contact? Monitoring the development, making the changes, maybe some education programs going on, DNA manipulation that didn't just happen 800,000 years ago. It could have been millions of years ago. Right. It could have happened throughout the history of the planet, but through the development of Homo sapien sapiens, through to today, where this contact is here, that they were not necessarily just in Australia, but all around the planet at the same time. There's no reason for ET to just land in Melbourne, right? I mean, it would be all over the planet at the same time.
Well, the thing is, the first thing I'd say to that is you only have to prove aliens once.
That's right. That's right.
Because once you do that, then you open the floodgates of having to re-question everything else, especially anytime you find an anomaly somewhere, right? It changes the story. If you find some ancient artifact that shouldn't be there, or if you find a genetic anomaly a million years earlier, then you can say, well, was it those blooming aliens again? Because now we know they're real. We know they've meddled with us at least once, 800,000 years ago. Then how many other times have they been here? How many other times have they meddled with us? Were they always constantly doing this? And you're exactly right. That once you get to that point, then you can start to have that discussion. Because we've had that discussion in a way in the fringe. But the problem is we didn't have evidence where we could say, but they were definitely here at least once. Okay, and that's the difference here. Is I think I've been able to put enough evidence in on this one event, this one period, with the genetic data, the physical debris, the other, the meteor aspects, all this stuff that was going on 780,000 years ago, that you get what I would say is the best clear signal, the big flag for we were here. Then after that, you can look at some of these other smaller events, like 1.8 million years ago, there's a sudden leap to Homo erectus, which, again, there's papers that point this out. Some of the scientists consider before that it wasn't really humans, that the leap is that significant from like a chimp-like brain to a brain that's not as big as ours, but, significantly larger, more complicated brain about 1.8 million years ago, with Homo erectus, who then conquers the world, right, and goes out, conquers the world. And that again has the flags of some engineering. There's a whole lot of changes in the way the brain neurons develop and stuff, right, which are to do with genetic changes at the time, right? So I would say that's another incident that looks like it's a modification. Also around about in that period 200,000 years ago, which you touched on earlier, there are some changes there. And there was a recent paper came out about what's called DNA barcodes, if people want to look this up. And it turns out that between about 100,000 to 200,000 years ago, about 70% of all the animals on the planet, the mitochondrial DNA lineage seems to be new from around that point. Like some major event, something has happened that has modified 70% of the creatures on the planet, right? Now that, again, can be a modification event. Probably, I would suggest, for something on that scale, it would be seeding a virus into the atmosphere that's been modified. And actually, I ran this past the guy who wrote the paper, so I'm not just saying it. And he agreed that this was a possibility, that it could be a virus has infected all of these life forms. It brings new information into the system, causes a radical mutation, and that then we get almost a refresh of species, right? And so viruses are a good way of doing this. With the virus going on now, people should have in the back of their heads have a little light go on. Because, right. Because if these things rain down from the upper atmosphere, you can have them rain down across the whole planet. And if they're designed to infect specific organisms, then they will. So it doesn't have to be they target all of you. They could target one species, or you could modify a virus so it targets many species. Right? If you know what you're doing, you have these modified retroviruses, and they rain down. And viruses are raining down on us all the time. Right, this is something that a lot of people don't realize. But up in the upper atmosphere, there are viruses just swirling around, and they're raining down you all the time. But most of them don't do anything obvious to you. Like some might infect other animals, some might, not do anything. But they're constantly raining down. And in fact, your immune system is built up by being outside, partly because you're exposed to viruses all the time. You're breathing them in the air. Right? This is kind of how your immune system is being boosted. Now, if some of those are alien seeded, then as you walk around, you can be breathing in something that is the next leap in evolution. And again, with what's happening now, we should question that. I mean, there's some weird elements about that whole story, because, if you look at Chandra Wickremesinghe, who's the very famous astrobiologist who writes about panspermia and alien viruses, he actually called this pandemic back in November. He said he thought there was a pandemic coming because they'd had this meteorite event over China. And he believed that spores of virus had been brought in, and he was saying that we should maybe look out for a pandemic in the next few months. Now think about that. The guy called it in November, right? And it turns out there was a pandemic. And he says that if that's the case, what would happen is when it rains down and there's a direct transmission, the impact of that first infection is stronger. So those people will get stronger impacts. But then as it's passed human to human, that you get less disease or less, obvious symptoms of these viruses. And that kind of weird, because we have noticed that, like with this current virus, in some areas it's infected, it seems to have done a lot more than in others, right? In some places there's nothing, and in some places it seems to be quite strong, and that's kind of what he suggests would happen. So again, this kind of meshes with current events to a degree, right? But these viruses, I'm not saying it definitely was a modified alien virus, but we should keep that in the back of our minds. But certainly that's one way to do this, and I think that this has happened throughout history. I think and he talks about the Cambrian explosion in the same way. He says that it could well have been one of these alien viruses rained down, infected the life on the planet at the time, and then caused radical mutations. So you had all these species appearing out of nowhere because that generation of whatever life existed was radically mutated by this virus and started producing all these new life forms, right? There's a huge leap.
Now, when we talk about the Pleiades, are we suggesting, and when I say we, I'm saying you and I, right? Are we in a Pleiadian image?
I would say yes, because I mean, when the encounters in terms of contact experiences and in terms of the description from the people in the book, the people I refer to, obviously the contactees in Australia and all that, but not just them, globally, the people that have an interaction with beings that associate themselves with the Pleiades, most of those are human looking. They're not identical, but they're human looking. They generally have our basic form. Some people say the eyes are a bit bigger, but they're taller and they have a slight bluish tinge to their skin. But a lot of people, I think these are the same beings that some people call like Nordic looking. So they look kind of Nordic looking, but they're not actually white like a European. It's more like
but they're humanoid.
Humanoid, yeah, but with just a bluish tint to their skin, like like blue ice. When you get that kind of light blue in the ice sometimes. It's a bit like that. You get a tint of that to them. And they are tall and they have very light hair, like white hair usually. Right. So this is one group of them. There's others. I mean, people report obviously other beings associated with the Pleiades, but this particular group, yes. I mean, we seem to be in their image. They look very human-like.
So this hybrid modification to our genetics, 800,000 years ago, maybe prior, but 800,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, this snip, this CRISPR, this DNA modification came from the same group, from the Pleiades?
This particular time, the events, around 800,000 years ago, yes. I can't say for the others. I believe that some of these other earlier events are not done by them. I believe that, in my understanding, this planet has had a presence of a humanoid reptilian type, which is much older, which has been here for much longer, and that this is a kind of an intervention, that this isn't always the same group that's doing this stuff. But this is more of an upgrade, and some of the other stuff has been not so much of upgrades, just kind of playing games with genetics. And that's why I think 800,000 years ago is a kind of intriguing one, because it's the first time we really see what appears to be modifications that will be beneficial, like, truly beneficial to us. Obviously, the giving of this complex brain that allows our freedom of thought. Suddenly we're able to produce all these unique tools and, boats and everything. It's really different to what's come before. Whereas there seems to be a sort of playing with DNA and creating all sorts of life forms and stuff. There's not that same impetus. I mean, this is described as an event where they are definitely trying to engineer a species that is, highly intelligent and that is able to operate on its own free will. So their reasons for doing it, their motivations, their intentions, are quite different, and this is sort of clarified. So I think it's different in those terms. I do think there's been modification at various other times, but this is one that we can sort of point to and say, well, look, this is not entirely an upgrade. It comes with some genetic problems, quite honestly, but overall, it's given us the things that we're familiar with. Our opposable thumbs and our big brain and our immune systems. A lot of stuff there has come from events then we see in the genome around that time. So this is a particularly important event, and it does look like what we'd say sort of CRISPR type, gene drive type changes. I don't think this was raining down, from my understanding, it wasn't raining down viruses. It was a presence. There's landing, there's modification done on a group of hominins. This is not, panspermia, viruses in the atmosphere. It's literally doing it on the ground. One of the things interesting, are you familiar with gene drives? Have you seen it's come up in the news recently.
Yes, and
gene drives.
Yeah, and we're gonna we'll discuss that right after the break. We got to get this in. Our guest tonight, Bruce R. Fenton, talking about his new book that was just released. It was co-authored with his wife, Daniella. Exogenesis, Human Hybrids, A Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation. More with Bruce when we come back. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal God on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to getthetea.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's getthetea.com.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRAradio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Teppy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. If you ever miss an episode live of Fade to Black, this is a live radio show. But if you ever miss a live episode, it's simple. Just get our podcast. Go over to jimmychurchradio.com where you can click and subscribe and get it for just $2 per month. We have over 1,200 archive shows right there for you, including all of the past episodes with Bruce R. Fenton. It's a good thing you have the R in there, Bruce, because there's a lot of Bruce Fentons out there running around. And you just want to make sure that people are going and checking out the right one. It reminds me of like Yngwie J. Malmsteen. Okay, that's an inside joke. You didn't get it. You didn't get it. You're not an Yngwie fan?
Don't know. No.
He's a guitar player, man. Don't worry about it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bruce Fenton, though, the other Bruce Fenton is the one on that people may see on Twitter, particularly, is a crypto expert actually, and I do communicate with Bruce, so the Bruces do know each other. But yeah, he has the main Bruce Fenton kind of website and a lot of Bruce Fenton social media. So I'm Bruce R. Fenton, so it does differentiate us. But we actually do talk. So there you go.
Now, back to where we were, talking about this CRISPR technology, or CRISPR-like, right? There's some snipping going on. Mm-hmm. And I think that the evidence is very, very clear of the progress and the radical appearance of us 200,000 years ago. But I wanted to get your opinion on why wasn't Cro-Magnon messed with? Why wasn't Neanderthal messed with? And why aren't they here with us today?
Well, I would say that, they all come from that same messing with, because really, if you trace back all of the large brain hominids, they all go back to that event 780,000 years ago. That's when we see them start to split in the fossil record, right? So, and in the genetics. So they all have that signature. They all have the chromosome 2 fusion. They have the modifications that gave them their big brains. But yeah, we have differences. But they came out of the experiment. Put it that way. It's like if you were doing an experiment, and maybe you're not going to get the same results, all the time, or maybe you don't even want to. Maybe you want to try a few different types, right? See who does best, which makes a lot of sense, So we do have a few different kinds come out of it.
Now, we always talk about the evidence, right? Okay, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? And you, and I want you to discuss this in depth because it's astonishing if this is accurate. I'm talking about a debris field that went from the North to the South Pole, just about, didn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's enormous. I mean, and the thing is, I give people this, a quick overview, and then I want them to keep in mind as well here that, NASA has studied this, all kinds of universities have studied this, and not one of them has come up with this question of what the hell is going on here, because this is a big mystery. What we have is, this melted sort of quartz crystal type material with other elements in it. It's got titanium and iron and stuff, a little bit. There's aluminium as well, 10% aluminium, but it's basically 75 to 80% silica from melted quartz with other metals mixed in, right? Now, and it's scattered all the way up. This enormous debris field, I say starting at Antarctica, goes all the way up to southern China and out into the oceans, on either side, covering around about 20% of the planet's surface. I mean, there's nothing like it ever on the history of this planet in terms of a debris field, whether from impacts or from anything, right? There's nothing on that scale. It's totally unique. And that within that debris field, you also have a totally unique form of debris, called these button tektites that look like a kind of button or look like a nose cone off of a rocket ship. And the reason they look like that is because they're shaped by the aerodynamic forces of coming into the atmosphere. It's why we have nose cones, right? It's why we shape things like that. They have to pass through the aerodynamic forces, okay? So you have that as unique, again, in the whole history of the planet. And anytime you get something unique in the history of the planet, you're talking about an anomaly, right? Straight away, you've got an anomaly. Why isn't this happening again? Why don't we find it anywhere else? The problem has been that there was, when they first found these, they weren't sure what happened. They thought maybe they're man-made, were they made by volcanic action? That was dismissed. And they came down to two possibilities. Either there'd been an impact, a meteorite or something huge, meteorite thrown this material out. Even then they're struggling because of the size of this debris field, right? And then the other idea was that maybe something hit the moon, and a piece of the moon had broken off, and the debris had flown here from the moon and had rained down. And there was an argument between these two camps, right, for decades, because the problem was, on the one side, you could explain some of the data, with that theory, and on the other side, you could explain some of the other, but neither theory could explain it all. And so they were locked in this kind of war for a long time. Now, more recently, the impact theory has kind of become the mainstream view, and the reason for that was because when they started to examine lunar rock, they found that the australite debris didn't match with it, so that strengthened the impact hypothesis, and the lunar camp kind of had to back down. But keep in mind, the terrestrial impact still couldn't explain all of the anomalies. It just became the default because the scientists didn't have anything else to offer, because then you have to go into stuff like what I'm saying, which is extraordinary stuff, which they never will, right? So there was this problem. So now they're stuck with this model, which doesn't really work, but it's the only one that they're willing to say. Now, really quickly say, why doesn't it work? If you have an impact somewhere in Southeast Asia, is what they calculate, that was going to throw out all this material and somehow all the way down to Antarctica, which is just extraordinary. But you've also now got some of it shaped by coming in from the upper atmosphere, right? So you're now just saying that not only does it throw all this material, but some of it goes up into space and it comes back down. Now that's a huge problem because like when things hit, they don't normally throw the debris into space, firstly, right? That doesn't normally happen. And then also you've got it coming back down. So it's captured, comes back down. That's a problem. Now you've got another problem in there, is that the material itself is really homogeneous. It's totally uniform. Like the glass, each piece is made of the same components, basically. When something impacts, you get all sorts of rock around, and you get different pieces of material, right, fused between, say, if you've got granite there and you've got sandstone, you'd have different pieces that are different composition, and some of them are half melted, some of them are fully melted. You don't have that in the australite. It's all uniform, right? They said there's a problem. They said there's a lack of bubbles in it, which you get from impacts. So this looks more like we make glass and we remove the bubbles from it. And that where they have got bubbles, they're trapped vacuum. So if something impacts our planet, you're going to have bubbles of air trapped in it, right? You don't have bubbles of vacuum, yeah? So all of these things were, because for the NASA studies, they said it was just obvious that this is a space, formation. And they, on top of that, the way these buttons form, said it has to be a really gentle entrance into the atmosphere, that you've got essentially orbit, and that these are decaying orbits. And as they come in at a shallow angle, they gradually melt, and the liquid runs back from the front. So you have a sphere, it melts on the way in, liquid runs to the back, and it starts to form these aerodynamic shapes, right? And they said the only way you can have that is if it's at this shallow angle, because when a meteorite comes in, it comes in so fast, you get the surface evaporates, and the middle is actually still fairly cool. So you get a solid core, and the surface, the rest of it just evaporates. You don't get liquid, you don't get it running back, you don't get these shapes ever, right? So that for all these reasons, the NASA teams kind of concluded this had to be a large object that was in orbit. So some reason breaks up, there's a superheating event, that material then carries on in the orbit, starts to break the orbit and melts on a shallow angle, forming these buttons, and that then, you have them raining down. In fact, they're only across southern Australia, the buttons. The rest of the material is in different shapes, teardrop shapes and dumbbell shapes. Now, why that is, because the larger chunks of this object, they break the atmosphere further to the north, and you get aerial bursts, which is almost like nuclear bombs going off. These larger chunks explode in the upper atmosphere, and they throw down material that's in a different form, because it's not coming from space. And you've got these teardrop shapes, dumbbell shapes, and other shapes, right? So these are all the way up to South China.
All made from the same composition.
All made exactly the same composition. Yeah,
just different shapes.
Yeah, because if you imagine it, let's put it in people's minds. So let's just say you've got a ship or any object, and it's over, say, it's going to be over Antarctica, maybe across the sea towards Australia. You've got it in orbit there, and it is destroyed there. So if you imagine, you're going to get a big explosion. So the first lot of stuff is material that is forced down really fast. And in fact, some of this material was found on the moon, Jimmy. That's the other thing that was a clincher. I kept thinking, well, what if some of this had blown into space and landed on the moon? But I thought, well, there's no way to test that, because I can't go to the moon, and we've done very little exploration there. It turns out that on one of the lunar missions, they recovered 2 small spheres of a glass-like material. When they tested it, it was an exact match to australite. Right? So if you imagine you've got this craft, it's blown up, you've got material thrown into space, material thrown down, so we've got these buttons that come down from space, and we've got spheres on the moon from the same event. Now, the larger pieces of this craft, they carry on in an orbit, a decaying orbit that it was in, and those are the ones that, as they come down further to the north, they explode, and they start throwing down the material in these other shapes, which are the normal tektite shapes. So it's only when it's still in space that it throws it down through the atmosphere, you get the buttons. So it meshes exactly, if you can imagine, the orbit, a decaying orbit of a large ship that's been destroyed, with the initial explosion forcing down these pieces through the atmosphere, and then the other chunks break the atmosphere to the north as the orbit decays. These pieces come down, and they end in Laos and South China as the end of the debris field. And as you look on a map, if people go and look at the australite tektite field map, you can see there's this orbital path goes down across Antarctica down to southern China, exactly meshing with what you would expect in that scenario. And there's just no way with the conventional impact theory to explain that.
Now, what about the dating of this explosion?
Yeah, it's dated to 780,000 years ago.
And where does this dating come from?
That's from the geologists, multiple different universities, NASA, everyone. There's hundreds of papers, maybe thousands. There's hundreds of papers on the australite tektite study, because it's been such a mystery, and it's an unsolved mystery. You'll find there's papers that are titled The Enduring Australite Tektite Mystery, because they cannot rectify all of the anomalies, right? Still to this day, it's an ongoing mystery, because they just cannot rectify it. Every time they try and solve it, they come up with one of these problems like, well, how would it have these vacuum bubbles in it? How would it shape like that? So that's why it's remained an open mystery. I was stunned, when I went looking for evidence of a destroyed silica ship, because it's described as a silica ship, right, in the information I had. So I'm looking for some kind of molten silica debris. And I'm thinking, look, there's no way I'm going to find this. Even if it existed, it's too long ago. So imagine my shock when it turns out there's 100-year-long mystery in science about this silica debris that's rained down across half the planet, right? I was mind-boggled.
I have some of it, and it's very unique. It's very unique. I don't even know how to describe it. The shape, it's rounded, it's flat, it's like a little... like a pebble almost.
Yeah, like these little peas. And the thing is, if you cut it into slices, it's actually translucent. So although it looks black,
it's black. It's like dark brown. Black, dark brown. But it's very
clear when you cut it.
It's very dense. It's very dense. It's very heavy. For its size, you would not think that it has that kind of weight to it, but it does.
And there's nothing like. I mean, really, it's like the chemical composition. They said doesn't mesh with Earth. They said it would be probably from a planet that was similar, or a planet similar in composition to Earth, but it's different enough. And it's also because it's got 0 water content, and no rock on our planet has 0 water content. So there's 0 water in it. They said this again meshes with it having an outer space origin. The funny thing is, right, with all this mystery, the Aboriginal people, you ask them what do they think about it, and you look back in the records, they told the Europeans that this stuff had fallen from space, was extraterrestrial, and had rained down across the continent. How did they know that, Jimmy? Because considering this happened 780,000 years ago, it looks like someone's been keeping them in the loop, because they actually told the Western scientists, no, it rained down from space, right? So they knew that, and they say it's got magical powers, and it's an extraterrestrial, and it was rained down because of the Icemen. They call the Icemen. Now think about what I said earlier about these ice blue coloured people, right? They actually say the Icemen rained this stuff down in an event to kill this other group called the ring-tailed possum people, I think it is. But essentially, the narrative is the same, that there is this event, there's 2 different sides, which I cover. You've got a group on the ground, there's a conflict between them, and this material rains down as a result of the destruction of the ship. But the Aboriginal people had that in their own understandings. They also consider this to be highly sacred material, associated with shamanic powers and healing and all sorts of stuff. So it has a context in their society as well as being very special material. They know it's very special.
Now, so to condense this back into a narrative, we are talking about a civilization arriving here from the Pleiades, arrives here. The ship collides, explodes.
It's actually blown up. It's shot out.
It's blown up. Okay, and that was 780,000 years ago. And then at the same time, we have this tablet speaking to a woman, right? Which is giving her the history of man. She's writing it down. Does the tablet communicator timeline match with the 780,000 year old story as well?
What she was given was that it was something in the range of about, what she's written in her book, is somewhere in the range of about 900,000 years. I've seen her mention elsewhere, that depending on how you look at it in terms of their time or something like that, they're possibly around 700. So I've seen 2 different dates from her, but right in the middle of that is this 780.
Right.
So obviously I took it on the view of that, well, I know that when people get information from higher sources, sometimes the dates are a bit out. So the way I looked at it was, I'm going to look between 700 and 900 and see if any of this evidence is there. And it turned out all of it's there, but only on 780,000. You can't cherry pick and say one's from 700, another event's from 800, another's from 900, because then you'll be just cobbling it together, right? So I was quite clear that it had to actually mesh in time as well as with the events. And it turns out that you have the material at 780,000, you have the beginnings of Homo sapiens in the genome, the genomic anomalies, and the chromosome 2 fusion, all of that dates back to 780. This split between us and Neanderthals and Denisovans, that dates back to 780. So you've got the genetic engineering at the same point, which is key to this, that they can't be totally different times, otherwise it won't make sense. And then the third one was that it also talks about an alien engineered multi-directional impact on our planet of asteroids that had pulled in and had pummeled the planet to pummel these underground bases of this other extraterrestrial collective. And that also has turned out to be real, that 2016, a team of geologists from a German university discovered evidence of a multi-directional bombardment that hit in Central America, parts of Asia, down in Tasmania, and that they have found multiple impact sites. And the thing was, they found that they're all different. The composition of the asteroid impacts was different. So it wasn't like one object breaking up, right, which you might think is more reasonable. Instead, it's totally different objects all bombarding the planet from different sides, right on that same time. Now, the other thing you've got then is the last magnetic pole reversal. I mean, so it starts just getting like wacky, because at 780,000 years ago, we have the last magnetic polar reversal. You also have an impact of an object the same size as the one that wiped out the dinosaurs that hit in Antarctica. And it turns out that one left a hole in the ice 200 kilometers by 200 kilometers. The guy estimated that was about the same size as the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, but it didn't have as much of an impact because it hit the ice, and that was the saving thing. So one of these objects was enormous, like miles across. So this was a whole range of like cataclysmic event on top of this alien engineering and all the rest of it. It was an extraordinary time. And the mad thing is that we are not really talking about it. Apart from me, this is not something that we learn at school. It's not something that's been, in any National Geographics or, 780,000 years ago is like the craziest time. Huge reversals of the magnetic field, massive impacts, an object breaking up in the sky, the beginnings of our species, and yet nobody really talks about that period. Like, what the hell's going on there?
What happened to the original, and just so I'm understanding this, the original 50,000 Pleiadians that arrived here, where did they go?
Right, most of them are killed in this ambush, essentially an ambush. There's a destruction of the craft in orbit by this other group that's already here, is underground in bases. There is a betrayal. This is supposed to be a negotiated arrival and a transfer of control of the planet between two different collectives, this kind of Pleiadian alliance and another group which are most part of a reptilian type, which obviously comes up a lot in ancient lore, that they're already here. They're the kind of masters of the planet at the time, but there's supposed to be an organized handover of this planet back to the original seeders of this world, which are this other Pleiadian collective. There's an ambush, destroy the ship, a few smaller craft come down, and they're the ones who do this work. They can't survive here. I mean, if you think of it, again, there's logic to this. They use genetic engineering technologies on themselves. So when they colonize a planet, they're modifying themselves to be able to live there. And I think this is what we're going to do when as humans go forward, right? And in fact, they're talking about it now. You might have seen this for the Mars colony thing. They're talking about modifying us to be able to live there, right? So this is not new idea. This is something that's been done before. They were going to do that themselves. Because their mothership is destroyed, they have not completed the process of modifying themselves, and they cannot live here long term. Some of them are dying off. It describes that the diseases in the air, there's bacteria in the water, things they can't handle, that some of them, even the radiation of the sun is too strong, it's burning their skin, so they can't live here. So this is when they make the decision that they're going to modify a hominin here, and it's going to sort of continue their process of the colonization of the planet in an abstract way, where they make us in their image. And they also make this clear, and this is kind of where it gets esoteric for a lot of people, but they also clarify that they intend to deliberately, consciously incarnate into these new humans, that there's a reincarnational element in this story. And that's where it ties back in with what is in the group consciousness in the modern times with Valerie Barrow and the people she met, is they remember being the extraterrestrials. They remember being them. So they all have memories of being them. So in that context, they're still here. And it says actually that all of them, the 50,000, enter into the reincarnational cycle of Earth, and that all 50,000 of them are here in human forms. A lot of them unaware that they've ever been an extraterrestrial, but they are here. Now that's as crazy as you like, I'm sure, but let's be honest, I think you've talked to enough people, a lot of people out there have talked to people who have those memories of being star seeds or whatever we want to call it, right? That's not exactly a rare thing. There's quite a lot of people that say they remember it. So those people are out there, and they're generally out there.
Now I'm looking at the clock. I'm wondering, okay, you know what? We're going to have to go into overtime. So just plan on that, because we got to take a break here in a couple of minutes. Okay. You're okay with that, right? Do you have a choice?
No, I have to tie it up properly.
Do you have a choice? Is this this has nothing to do with Nibiru and the Anunnaki? We're talking about two separate stories here.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I can I can say yes and no to that. I think that Nibiru, the story that we have in terms of the Anunnaki, I think is a parallel of this. I think that later on we have echoes of this story in other cultures, but they're a bit like Chinese whispers, right? So over the time, that story has become a bit more warped. But the Anunnaki just means, those who from the sky came. And I think that what you find, if you look closer at the Sumerian story, that they also are dealing with both a human-like type and a reptilian type. In fact, you see that in their artwork, right? So there's two different groups, and they said the two brothers, Enki and Enlil, that have different intentions for humans. I mean, that is an echoing story. You find that in some of the extra biblical texts as well, that there's these two groups of watchers, reptilian and humanoid, right? It comes again and again.
Well, and we also have a conflict, we have war, we have an explosion, we have different reasons for being here on this planet. We definitely have a lot of similar situations here, but it's also 400,000 years apart.
Yeah, I mean, the dates on it with Sitchin's work, I mean, one of the things that he didn't have, and again, this is a big issue, is that he didn't have any genetic argument, right? He didn't provide genetic evidence, okay? And obviously the Sumerians didn't have any genetic evidence. So, I mean, when you get to where we're at now, we're in the first period where you can actually look in the genome and say, well, when exactly did this stuff happen, right? And before that, nobody could do that. I mean, it's like Lloyd Pye, he talked about the chromosome 2 stuff, but even then, unfortunately, he passed away before we got to the real genetic revolution where we could date chromosome 2 and where we could date these anomalies. And that's where we're at now, is I'm in a position to be able to say, well, look, his specific changes and the dates on them. So, we've moved beyond the relying on ancient texts and stories to look, here's what's actually in the genome.
Well, what is the date of the chromosome 2 combo?
Right, that has now been dated. There's a guy, a British biologist, who looked at it. He wanted to work out when it happened. And the first thing that you come to is that it appears in Neanderthals and Denisovans, right, in us. So he said, well, we know that we all split around about 750, plus 1,000 years ago. So it has to be at least that old. And then he wanted to see, well, how old could it be? Was it all the way back to when we split from chimps, or was it more recently? And so he went into the chemistry of this and looked at when the ends of the two chromosomes had slowed down their mutation rates, which is when they've merged, right? Because ends of chromosomes mutate faster than the middles for logical kind of reasons. So he was able to date this merger to being, he said, again, somewhere close to 750,000 years ago. So it's pinpointed on that point. And we now know that these lineages split roughly 780,000 years ago. Ergo, it happens bang on that moment. The beginning of the different lineages happened with chromosome 2.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
So got the marker on it.
Yeah, fascinating. Let's take our break right here, Bruce, and then we'll come back and we'll do some overtime in this last segment. Our guest tonight, Bruce R. Fenton. We're talking about the book that he just co-authored with his wife, Daniella. It's called Exogenesis, Hybrid Human, Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation. More with Bruce heading into overtime after this short break. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us.
Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black Blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Again, visit ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. My guest tonight, Bruce R. Fenton. We are talking about his new book. It was just released. Exogenesis, Human Hybrids, A Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation, co-authored with his wife, Daniella. And the links for the book are over at jimmychurchradio.com. You can go and click and get yourself your very own copy. And now, Bruce, okay, this is where I find that things get very, very interesting, because we've all followed Sitchin, Lloyd Pye, and looked into the Anunnaki story. It's been discussed over and over again on this program and others. There's that part of it. And I always think that there's a genesis. There's some progenitor to all of these origin stories. The Sumerians did not make this up. They saw something, it's there, it was written, it was documented, it's part of history. Same thing with Australia. And this, where it's not made up. This kind of science fiction wasn't part of Stone Age.
Well,
yeah, you know what I mean? But there's the other side to this, where there are billions of planets in the Milky Way that are just like Earth. You could talk about the Pleiades if you want, but there is billions of planets and an infinite amount of civilizations out there that are exploring the planets. And the visitation here, just like today, could be from anywhere, from thousands of different civilizations visiting this planet. And it very may well be that what happened in Sumeria is independent of, and not the same civilization that visited us 780,000 years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, we could always have, there's always possibly have multiple groups. But I will say, if you look at the lore in Sumeria, there's a lot of pointing to the Pleiades. There's a lot of that number 7 popping up a lot. The 7 Apkallu. There's images of seven bodies in the sky above them, because you got Ishtar goddess, who's a Pleiades linked goddess. It pops up a lot. And in fact, there's a guy called Leonard Farrer who's written a series of books of Pleiades in the Old World, Pleiades in the New World, Pleiades in somewhere else. I mean, people find it, but he goes deep dives into it, and he actually shows that it's overwhelmingly pointing towards a Pleiadian influence in Sumeria as well. So I think we are dealing with the same beings. Now, on top of that, again, you got links there with models of what look like reptilian humanoids. There's that famous one of the female holding a baby, but she's reptilian and the baby's reptilian. I'm not sure if most of the listeners will either know that or they can find it. So I think we are dealing with the same beings. I think we're dealing with the same mainly the same two groups throughout history that are interacting with us. I'm not saying they're the only ones, but there's these main two of these kind of humanoid ones and these kind of reptilian ones that appear again and again in art, in stories, in the mythologies. And again, I do think we're dealing with the same. Now, one of the things that's happened recently was interesting in terms of the Sitchin story, because obviously he posited the idea that there was an additional planet right out there that the beings were coming from. Now, I've never bought that. It just doesn't fit. I think it just doesn't fit well for me, right? That this idea of this planet that comes in and out and again. And,
you're talking about Nibiru.
Yeah, right. If they were really star travelers and they had all these ships, they wouldn't need to wait for the planet to come closer or anything like that. You know what I mean? So there's a lot about it that didn't add up. But what's recently being found, and this is really interesting, is that there's a couple of different articles that have come out in the last year where they think that possibly this other body out in our solar system, this planet X or whatever, that it might actually be a kind of black hole, right? Now, if you think about that, what if it's not a black hole, it's a wormhole, and that the entrance to the wormhole is the massive object which is in our solar system? Because in that case, the beings would seem like they were coming from another body out there. They could say, yeah, we came from out there, but it's not actually a planet. It could be an anomaly. And that these things, that is the gate that links back to the Pleiades and links off out onto the grid, of stargates. And this is a funny thing because you look at native lore, they talk about the spider's web, this grandmother spider. There's a spider's thread that comes down. This is, I think, in Cree in Canada, that they talk about this hole in the sky of the Pleiades and a web that comes down and connects us to the web. Now, what is the web? Is that the network of stargates? One has to wonder, right? That is this our jumping off point? Is an anomaly that's out there where the beings come through, and that then they come to Earth. Now, that makes a lot more sense than there being a planet out there in the cold fringes that they live on, right? So I think that sometimes as the time moves on, again, with the genetics, we get more information. These stories evolve a bit because, 40 years ago or something, you could only deal with what you know, okay? So people talk about rocket ships and, other planets and stuff. But now we know about spatial anomalies and we know about, interdimensional time-space bending technologies. We understand kind of what it's more likely to be, right? Now, we wouldn't talk about rocket ships anymore. We know that aliens aren't going to be traveling around in rocket ships, okay? Right, that's obvious. Now, but at the time, all Sitchin and other people knew was NASA rockets, okay? So that's what was filled into the narrative was, probably these beings came here in rockets from another planet. But once you think about wormholes, they don't need to come from a nearby planet. They can come from the other side of the galaxy.
What about, we have the Pleiadian side of things. What about the Orion? What about the Orion side? And does that fit into Australia?
Yeah, that's actually where the other group are from, that they're in conflict with. And in fact, that's what they say in the narrative that, in Valerie's work, says that when the other group of the Pleiadians' allies arrive here as a kind of a policing mission, as a response to what's happened to this colony ship, they do a bombardment of the planet with these asteroids, and they say the other group most of them vacate the planet and leave through a stargate back to Orion. And that's where they come from. And if you look at the ancient mythology, Orion the hunter is chasing the Pleiades. Right?
And slaying a dragon.
Right, yeah, because there's a conflict between these two. There's a conflict between Orion and the Pleiades, which is age old. And we're essentially seeing the middle of a Cold War. That's how I would look at it. The as above, so below. Like down here, we've always been in this strange Cold War, East versus West, and all the rest of that. You can go back a long time. There's always been some semblance of a Cold War down here. It's not just down here, right? It's up there. You've got two very powerful collectives. They're not actively fighting in this solar system at the moment, but there is a Cold War between them, and we're sitting in the middle. The influences are still here. And that's why when contactees say, on the one side there's these negative experiences, on the other side there's these positive experiences, people are meeting Pleiadians, other people are meeting reptilians, that this stuff is still going on, that this isn't over. This Cold War is still there, bubbling away in the background, but it has been hot in the past. There's been active warfare in the past.
That would explain a lot on this planet. half of the humans are Orion.
We're meddling.
Half of them are Pleiades. Okay, so we have the Orion side. This is getting very interesting, and the Pleiades. Is there one wormhole that is reaching out to both of these constellations, or are there two?
I don't know, but I mean, there could be two, and there could be other ways they're doing this. We hear a lot about portals, so are there other ways that are more, maybe small scale, where, you can open a portal and beings come through? Because that gets reported. You hear people saying that they've seen beings come through portals and stuff. So, I mean, maybe the wormholes are for ships, and that portals maybe allow individuals through, smaller gateways. So, I mean, how exactly all this is done? We're going into kind of mind-boggling physics, right, which is, beyond my level of physics, but it does seem that in some cases we seem to be talking about smaller gateways that beings appear through. So how exactly all of that functions, I can only speculate, but I think that there's definitely at least one major kind of Stargate link from here. But it could be that it could be one, and it could be that they link on from there to other places. Again, the Pleiades connection, the beings. This is kind of clarified. The beings on their ship, they're not really from there as such. It's not that they evolved there. There's a collective of different beings on this ship. Mm-hmm. They're not just this one type that I've talked about. These kind of blue humans. There's others on there. There's some that are a silica-based life form that is in a kind of robotic suit. Is one of them, right? There's others that are even not really even physical as such. They're more like it's somewhere in between, and they're on board. There's beings that are not physical that interact with them, that communicate information. It's like a collective of different entities out there, almost into the Star Trek kind of thing, an alliance of all kinds of different beings on the one side, and on the other side, the reptilians. People, contactees have seen them with mantis people and with greys and stuff, right? So it seems like there's different collectives out there. It's not as simple as two different species and that's it. I think there's a far more complex alliances and network of politics going on out there that would boggle our minds. It'd be like that scene in Star Trek where all the, they're in the ambassadorial meeting, right, with all the different heads of states. And so it may be something more wacky like that.
Now, what about the megalithic sites around the world? I just mentioned Göbekli Tepe earlier in the show, and of course we have Giza and the Giza Plateau and the Great Pyramid. We've got Stonehenge. Mm-hmm. What about those sites? Are those directly connected? And there's a lot of research tying Orion directly to the Great Pyramid and the Pyramid Complex, and even Göbekli Tepe and other cultures around the planet too, as well. Mm-hmm. Not directly connected to a megalithic site pointing towards Orion, but they have the Orion origin story that is part of their culture. Is there a tie-in there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, particularly the Great Pyramid. In fact, if you look at the Giza Plateau, it's actually a star map on the ground. There's the important sites of the Giza Plateau match up to various constellations. Orion and the Pleiades. Obviously, you've got Orion, you've got the main pyramids. The Pleiades down at Abu Ghurab and Abu Simba. That's right. You've got on the ground, you've got the Pleiades system there, and you've also got other stars that are matched to the ground. The whole of the Giza Plateau is a star map. So, I mean, you can always, if you look at the stars and you start overlaying them over, you can actually find sites on the plateau by knowing where stars were, right? This is a kind of amazing fact, but you could actually go and find, you could make a discovery just based on meshing the stars to the ground, because all of their key sites on the plateau mesh with a star, right? So they understand, these links. So it's not just Orion, it's also the Pleiades, and those are the two most crucial, star systems. And in fact, there is a site, Abu Ghurab, which is where, for me, most of this began. I mean, I went there back in 2011, 11/11/11, I was actually there, with a friend of mine, Richard Gabriel, who is also an Egyptian researcher. Well, he's not Egyptian, but he's an Egypt researcher from the UK. He happened to be there at the same time as me. We didn't arrange this, but thanks to him, I was able to get to a lot of sites I wouldn't have, like under the pyramids, into areas under the ground, also into Abu Ghurab, which is supposedly off limits. And that is actually, there's an article out there by William Henry called The Stargate at Abu Ghurab. And I didn't know that this was supposed to be a Stargate site, but this is where it happened for me, because I was there and I got this sense of a connection with the Pleiades. I looked up, I was looking at it, and I started to, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a sense that there was someone there, and I was talking to them in my mind. that, why don't you come back? Why aren't you helping the planet? The planet's in all this trouble, and like a real sense that there was someone else there, like when I was standing in that site. Now later on, I found actually that that's supposed to be a Stargate site with a connection to the Pleiades, and that there's a large crystalline platform there with a Hotep symbol on it. That's alabaster platform. Really weird. People look it up. The platform at Abu Ghraib, and we were standing on. We kind of did a meditation standing on it before that, and that seemed to have connected me to these Pleiadian beings, and that's when it all began for me, really, this whole thing. And a few months later, my wife had direct contact with them. They started basically kind of astral abducting her. She got a load of information. All sorts of stuff happened to her for a year. Like every few days, she was getting taken by them, interacted with. And that's what led to connecting with Valerie Barrow and these Australians that were involved in this research, because of our own Pleiadian connections that were going on. So this didn't just come out of nowhere. There's a much longer, complex backstory to why my wife and I ever got involved in this, and we had so much stuff going on in the background that doesn't all make it into that book. I cover some of it, as there's a chapter that we tackle a little bit of my wife's experiences, but she had like 2 or 3 events a week for about a year, so it was massive amounts of information and stuff going on.
She's going to be our next guest on Fade to Black, by the way.
I've got the to media channel, Shaman.
We'll talk her into it. But what about megalithic sites in Australia?
Yeah, there are megalithic sites in Australia. They don't get a lot of coverage.
No,
they don't get a lot of cover. But we do have. There's a pyramid site. There's the Gympie Pyramid. There's large megalith complexes which have been destroyed mainly, which is one of the problems, that farmers used to break them up, almost mow them into the ground.
What part of Australia?
Oh, well, all across. But I mean, down in New South Wales, where I was living, there's quite a lot there. There was quite a lot of sites there. That in many cases you got smaller, what's called borrow rings, which are smaller stone rings. But the larger sites, it seems that that historically a lot of places were smashed up. And there's a few. There's a big deal about one site, which I'm not sure if it's in New South Wales, but there's a stone circle which has been mowed into the ground, which some people have been trying to push for getting it kind of repaired. But up in the north, there's mound sites, and they think these mounds go back to maybe 9,000-10,000 years ago or more. There's other, let's say, lots of these small circles. In fact, one of the earliest stone circles, astronomical observatory type circles, I think it may be, so I'm not sure exact age, maybe again towards that, 8,000 or so years old, is a stone circle in Australia, one of the first astronomical observatories. So these things, they're not very well known. So people think of Australia as not having anything like that, because it doesn't really get the coverage that Egypt and Sumeria and everything get. But they do have mound sites, they do have stone circles, and they did have megaliths which have been, let's say, destroyed. And then when you go up into island Southeast Asia and Indonesia, there's a lot of megaliths there, and they're not dated, right? But some of these, I believe, go back to beyond 12,000, right? That's where I think that there was a lost civilization that we might well call Atlantis, something like that, that was in that region before the water rose and just left those islands, because there used to be a huge amount of land there, the Sunda Plate, and I think that there was a large advanced megalithic civilization there. And what we see now on some of those islands, these individual megaliths, are parts of a lost culture which gave us things like Gunung Padang. Gunung Padang seems to be possibly 20,000 years old or more, a huge temple site.
Right.
Indonesia. So these are the remnants of the cultures that were down in Southeast Asia and Australasia, right? That there were these megalith builders, the first really megalith builders. I mean, if Gunung Padang's 20,000 years old, that makes it the oldest megalithic site that we know of.
Now, what's the difference between you and I today in 2020 and 700,000 years ago? Why it appears, and I know that I feel that this is the case, that E.T. had no problem about making their presence known with us. Why aren't they doing that today? Or are they coming back? And when they do come back, is it going to be Orion or the Pleiades?
Yeah, first of all, I'd say I don't think that they've gone anywhere. I think that if you look, particularly if you look at the Americas, the North American indigenous peoples and the South American indigenous peoples, that they have a continuous tradition of interaction, particularly the elders and shamans, stuff that, up in the north, they talk about star family that visit. and in ceremonies, Star Family manifest and stuff like that. If you look at the books of RD6 Killer Clark, who's got a series of books on contact with Native Americans, that she details so many cases where there's ongoing events for Native people. And down in the South as well, down in South America, it's normal for shamans and stuff to interact with these extraterrestrials, right? And in the jungles and places like that. Where,
I agree. I totally agree with that. But
Yeah,
I'm
so
talking
it's
about
us.
you and I going to the pub with that's what I'm talking about.
It's us. You know, the thing is, it's the culture of what we'd say, the modern European, North American, westernized culture, that for one reason or another, the interaction is very limited with us. And that's the funny bit, is that it's not that it's no one else is having it. It's our culture, the dominator culture, which is also the culture that's destroying the environment and everything. It seems that we're the one that's not really in the loop fully. Okay, so I believe that is a conscious reason for that. That it's to do with perhaps, you know, how we're behaving with the planet and other aspects of our culture, and also the fact that we've turned away from more metaphysical thinking. I think that they are holding back to see where we go before they look at restoring that kind of level of interaction with us, because obviously the more traditional cultures seem to have a very accepting view of interaction with other intelligences, but we don't. You know, we look at it as woo-woo and, you know, crazy and all of that stuff. So it seems that actually is part of why we're not having more contact, is our cultural beliefs that it's, you know, silly, and it seems to have actually meant that they're kind of like backed off a bit. So I wonder if, you know, my thing is, if we start to accept this information more, like this case particularly, that my feeling is that what they're trying to do is show us, look, we're related to you, you know, we've been involved with you all this time, chill out, you know, we're going to start manifesting a bit more, but understand it's not an invasion or anything, that we are related to you, you know, we're not going to like eat you, right, or anything like that. So it's a acclimatization program, I think, of reconnecting with the people in our culture. I think the other cultures already sort of have that, right? So I do think it's us that's in the focus right now.
Well, okay, so and this isn't a United States or an American phenomenon. Contact here on this planet is global. But the contact and the knowledge at the state level, I'm talking about the United States, United Kingdom, Russia, China, Japan, Brazil, Chile, Argentina, Australia. That contact, that ongoing contact, is that from the Pleiades? Is that from Orion, or is it from somewhere else?
My feeling on that is that mainly when we get to the kind of conspiratorial, like, you know, the deep state and all, they're dealing with this Orion group, and this is the main power on our planet in terms of ET presences, that they are kind of more of a, you know, a negative influence. But, you know, if they are transferring useful information, you can imagine with the kind of leaders that we've mostly all had, that they not necessarily are actually prime ministers and stuff and presidents, because I don't know how much in the loop they are. I mean, usually we're talking about people that are in for life, right? These people in these projects that are there for their whole life. You know, the president comes and goes, the prime minister comes and goes. But these people, I think that they're interacting more with these groups that are not beneficial, that are willing to give information and stuff in return for something, you know, rather than dealing with the more, you know, peaceful groups. That I think, you know, and again, if you look at our warlike behavior and all those things, those mesh better with the idea that we're dealing with a warlike group that is happy to help us on our weapons technologies and that kind of thing in exchange for something, probably DNA codes. You know, I would say the focus has always been on DNA, genetics, eggs, sperm, all of that. So the return has got to be something to do with genetics. There's not much else on this planet that is actually that interesting. There's something that people think about it, like gold, you know, that comes up. No, because gold you can get from the asteroid belt. There's whole meteorites that are almost entirely gold. Water, there's water on the moon, there's water on asteroids. You know, all the things that people sort of say, well, maybe they come here for our minerals or our water or our gold. It's like, no, not really, because all those things are available out there in space. The only thing that we have that's unique here is the life that's here and the genetic codes, right? So that is the only thing we have of particular value to an extraterrestrial race. So if there's an exchange program, you can bet it involves our genetics, either that of us, animals, plants, or whatever, but the DNA codes on this planet would have value, okay? So I suspect that there's a trade-off going on between them and the other groups, and that the more benevolent groups are kind of singing the wings, waiting to see which way we go. Because look, imagine they just come storming and say, we're going to help you out, and it looks like an invasion, right? So this is another problem that we've got, that it can easily be spun as that's an alien invasion, and that could actually be the cavalry, because how would the average person know, right? Because
well, we shoot first. We shoot first.
And if there's a hidden group already here, right, then those coming in look like the invaders, right? So that's kind of an ironic situation where, look, they could be coming to help us, but it would look like they were invaders because the other group are already here in their underground bases and stuff, right? So we have this problem. And that's the way I view that. And I think that what we have now is, with this work and other books that are coming out, other people that are, relaying the contacting information, is that these beings are trying to acclimatize us and say, look, we've got friends out there, but you guys need to kind of shift your direction away from the negative. Otherwise, we can't really help you. You've got to break off these ties with these other groups and start to ask for, a leadership that wants to work with benevolent ETs and get rid of these projects that are working with negative ETs.
I've got about 2 minutes left, Bruce. I want to get this in. It seems that we are being told through the media and through our government that something is imminent when it comes to ET and knowledge. Okay, and it's palpable. You can touch it. Yeah. It's there. What do you think ultimately is going on?
Yeah, because we've got, obviously, in the last few years, the media has suddenly turned its attention to the UFO topic and aliens.
No question about it.
Yeah, very visible. And now we can see, like, once upon a time we'd have said, oh, no, they'll never tackle this stuff, it's too crazy. But now with coronavirus, economic collapse, and Brexit, all these other massive things going on, social change, uprisings, I think we can all start to believe that this stuff's coming. There's going to be something big coming in that direction, right? They've already given us the thing that the UFOs are real. Not only are they real, but they can basically teleport around the sky. They go from 80,000 feet to sea level in under a second. So for all intents and purposes, it's like teleporting around, right? And they're telling us that. So this is going somewhere. And of course, we've got TTSA, we've got all of that, which is obviously linked with all sorts of government people, right? The deep state type people, government people. And people spin that however they like. But look, it's been, I think, well established now. There's not just the people on the board at TCSA. Like, there are connections. There's all sorts of people in this story. Right? There's all sorts of people in this story. People that we don't know the names of that are also filtering into this UFO topic, and journalists that have been waiting to be fed this story for a long time. That if you look at Richard Doty, and if people don't know him, look him up. Much as the man is not that super trustworthy, I agree with him on one point. He said, look, that the Air Force and others were always paying off certain journalists and paying off certain ufologists and all sorts of stuff. They've always had their finger in that pie, ready for something, right? And this is the something, that they're going to unfold something on us, right? Now, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes, because I think we are actually having a ramp up in contact itself, but I do wonder what the angle's going to be from the government, whether we're going to get spun some sort of this threat narrative, and that maybe they're going to spin it that the benevolent ET are the threat, right? And that's what I was sort of hinting at before, that what if there is a group that wants to help us, right? And that it gets spun as the threat, and we're supposed to weaponize and start fighting them. I mean, that would be horrific, but that is a possible scenario, and we've got to be really careful we don't get dragged into shooting down entities, or trying to shoot down entities that are trying to help us, right? Or something crazy like that, because we've got to be really mindful that if there's another group here influencing us, they're going to influence us to open fire on their enemies.
Yeah, I think we need to seriously calm down. And
we shouldn't shoot on anyone. We hold off, work out what's going on.
No, we need to calm down, because we're also being observed. Right, and they're watching what's going on this planet right now. There's no question about that, and we have to.
Watchers.
Yeah, we have to demonstrate. Bruce, thank you so much, man. And again, the book is available right now on Amazon. We have the links for it over at jimmychurchradio.com. You got to get over here to the States, and hopefully in 2021, come over and speak, and we can hang out.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to.
Now, we'll be over in London. We'll be in Manchester. We'll be over in the UK next year. So come and hang out with us, man.
I would definitely be there.
Bruce R. Fenton. We just went coast to coast, man. We went pole to pole, Bruce. Thank you so much.
It's awesome. It was another awesome chat.
Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitola, Mark D. Kovar, Webmaster Drew the Geek, music Doug Aldrich, intro Spaceboy, SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA The Planet. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2020 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night is Fader Night, open lines all night long. Very special thanks to Bruce R. Fenton and, of course, his wife, Daniella. The new book, Exogenesis, Human Hybrids, a Scientific History of Extraterrestrial Genetic Manipulation. The link's for it over at jimmychurchradio.com. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll see everybody tomorrow night. Be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy.